Welcome everyone to the Wizard of excuse me, the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Sherrod Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Hello there to Miss Kim, long time no see. Bethany, TXT, Vake, Rooster. Beth, I hear you calling. Let's see what Beth had to say. I hear you, Beth. You take care of yourself, Bethany. The flock of Black Sheep Nation will be sending the good vibes your way. Hello there, Dee and Tina. Living the dream, of course, Rooster. KC, welcome. Tonight we got some new story that FBI profiler JIm Clemente, he's going to share what he believes the story of the blood spatter on Auntie Guthrie's front porch. So we're going to take a look at that. Hello there, Susan. Welcome. IP. Danielle from hell. How are you? Danielle's going to raise her hand and said, hi, I'm in Black Sheep Nation Anonymous. Hi, the first rule of Black Sheep Nation is to tell everyone you know about Black Sheep Nation and tell them to join the cult like a Jehovah's Witness. The first rule of Black Sheep Nation is to tell everyone you know about Black Sheep Nation and about how awesome it is. But we certainly just won't allow any Tom, Dick, or Harry in here, would we? Certainly not. Hello there, Christine. Welcome. Yes, amen. You see, Danielle's on the ball. Everyone can like the video on their way in. Spank that like button. Throw Shadow the Night Owl here a like vest. The same way Brian Hooker should have thrown a life vest to Lynette Hooker, but did not. And the former Marine decided, yeah, I don't think I'm going to chase after her. Hello there, Laura. Welcome. Danielle, that sounds like a great idea. And I think you would make a much better cult of Black Sheep Nation recruiter than many of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Easier on the eyes at the door. LS, welcome from Michigan. Welcome back from New Jersey. Oh dear. Licking the like button. Yes, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel out there too. Hello there, Jackie. Another loyal cult member. Hello there, Montana. This is Shadow the Night Owl. Everyone who doesn't know, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And as always, super chats, super stickers, becoming a channel member, or gifting channel memberships. Great way to support the channel. And I will see, depending on how well we do, I may start gifting some memberships if I can figure out how to do it, of course. Let's see. $18 likes, it's good. Memberships. I wonder if I would have to do it from a browser or if I can do it from a phone. That is the question. Let's see. I'm just looking up how to gift memberships, by the way. I'm not leaving you all, don't worry. We're just making sure. Let's see here. Membership gifting. Buy memberships for viewers. You have 10 gift memberships to send this month. Terms apply. Let's see what the terms are, by the way. Thank you for this, Laura. Gift memberships, about. You can send gift memberships free of charge each month. Well, I guess that's all you really need to know, right? So, We'll see what the Lords of Random have to say about that. Hello there, Jen. How are you? Holly, long time no see. The cult missed you. I called in to the room I won't mention on this case last night, about 3 hours in, about the blood on the porch. That's why this is really interesting. You are featuring this topic tonight for me. Well, JIm Clemente goes over it as well. And we've heard a story about this before, by the way. We've heard this from TMZ. They interviewed a woman about the blood spatter stuff, and she said something similar, so it's not completely. Hello there, Mason. Autumn Elizabeth. Lego. Lego my ego. Now, the option wasn't on my phone. I had to open it up in another browser. But I can see it now. I couldn't do it on my phone. Hello there, Marina. Welcome. That's what I said, Danielle. Licking the like button. Too much. Shadow shakes his head about that. Spanking is one thing. I watch every night. I just look up and sick. Well, lurking is acceptable as long as you remember to like the video. That's how we roll around here, right, Shadow? Right. But all right, let's see what FBI profiler JIm Clemente has to say. And everyone else, remember, I go live almost every night to talk about true crime and current events at a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern. Today was later because I did the members only live stream earlier, which was a grand old time. Hello there, Bella. How are you? Nice to be here. I saw a few things on the Spatter. SPA, Marina. Spatter. Not splatter, but Spatter. Hello there, Nora. Welcome. But like I said, I go and talk about true crime, current events, and I should add psychology to the mix too. Almost every night, and I use my experience with mental health, addiction, narcissistic abuse, narcissistic family systems, being on the spectrum, all that good stuff. You did miss it, Jen Glock. Sorry to say, but you're here now. That's what matters. That sounds like a nightmare, Bethany. Go away, clown. I say that very much myself. Go away, clown. Never to Shadow. Hello there, Maureen. How are you? We're going to go over we're going to do our Dexter routine tonight. We're going to watch JIm Clemente do his Dexter routine. Might be a shorter video tonight. We shall see. Our friend Megan Kelly went over D4VD again, by the way. But apparently Garagos apparently on team D4VD, which is quite interesting. Hello there, Julie Bug. Having some ice cream tonight? Or having some wine? Or some beer? Shadow's curious. Curious minds are wondering. Danielle did Russian abominable twist too. I have to be very careful and do everything slowly, but it went well. Well, that's good. Sometimes, Bethany, Shadow will use the fly swatter to spank the like button. Remember that. Thank you, Tina. We talked about all sorts of things, mental health, narcissism, even some politics, some Iran. Maybe not the smartest thing to talk about politics, but we did. I enjoy talking about it sometimes. But let's see what JIm Clemente has to say. I haven't seen the new Dexter series either, but the original one was pretty good. Yes, Mason, we spank the like button here. Or leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Hello there, Tim. Long time no see. Melatonin orally is for sporadic use only, really?
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. Really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. Really appreciate all the support. It's actually early in the morning when I'm taping this. I'm in the airport. I'm on the move. Actually working on a couple of new Nancy Guthrie stories. But in this episode, really interesting. I am digging into a couple of things. I'm talking to famed profiler, FBI profiler, JIm Clemente. First of all, he has a really detailed analysis of the blood spatter that was outside Nancy Guthrie's house. An analysis in a way that I haven't seen before, which I think you're going to find really interesting. And it really tells a story, he says. Also, what is the suspect or suspects in the Nancy Guthrie case? What are they thinking now? What sort of behavior are they exhibiting now, more than 2 months after the abduction? And how could that help people know what to look for in terms of tracking them down? JIm Clemente always just has such interesting analysis of these kinds of things because of his experience with the FBI as a profiler. I'm talking to him and getting into all of it in this episode of Brian Enton Investigates. JIm, thank you for joining me again. Really appreciate it. It's nice to see you. I wanted to start with you because with what you have been looking at with the blood spatter patterns, because I know you went back and analyzed it.
So the deal tonight will be, if we can get to about 150 likes, and that's a low target, by the way, low target indeed. But 150 likes, I will gift 5 memberships, but not until that point.
Video that we were able to take up on the front porch area of Nancy's house. What stood out to you?
Well, first of all, it was great to actually get the video itself so I could do it frame by frame and then isolate some images, because blood spatter evidence, mainly because of the viscosity of blood, the nature of blood, tells us a story, and it is frozen in time. It's a particular moment in time that this happened. But if you look at the first image where there's 2 distinct blood spatter patterns, first of all, there are some very clear indications from that image. And on the one that's more in the center of the screen, you can see some larger droplets of blood and then some smaller droplets of blood. And then to the right of that, you see what looks like a smear pattern. And that is somebody disturbing blood that has already been transplanted onto that surface. So, like I said, it tells a story. But if you then go to, if we kind of, so as an overview, these two spatter patterns happen very close in time, right? And they indicate some action that happened in the middle of them. So you can go to.
So this is the big part here, the action. What is the action that it indicates? JIm Clemente is about to tell us.
To the next picture. This is an image of a still image of this, a little bit of a close-up of that.
And to me, I'd always thought this looks like a cough / sneeze, but probably a cough. That was my thought. Let's see what he says.
That center pattern that we saw in the top of the last screen. And this tells me a number of things, and it's very specific. One is that at this point, Nancy her face was very close to the ground, within a foot of the ground. And this could be either she was on her knees and hunched over, or just hunched over, or actually laying on the ground. But it looks less like she was laying on the ground, but more like hunched over this spot. And the reason I can tell you that is because some of these are low velocity blood spatters and some are medium velocity blood spatters.
All right, so that was big. So not lying down, but more like hunched over. Some of the blood is lower velocity, others are mid velocity. That's pretty interesting to know. So I'm trying to visualize that. Could that be like 2 people carrying her each with one hand under an arm, under her like shoulder, armpit area, and she's not very high above the ground, and she like coughs. But could you imagine, like, what was the initial wound that did this? Being punched in the face? Something worse? I really don't know. Well, let's see.
We generally categorize them as low, medium, and high. A high velocity blood spatter are very tiny little, almost misty kind of droplets. And that happens only when blood is impacted for example, in a gunshot wound. But medium velocity can be impacted when it can be created when somebody actually aspirates blood and then coughs it up. And there's two indicators of that here. One is the small size of many of these blood spatters. And the other are, at the top of this image, you can see three circular blood spots, but they're hollow. You see mainly the ring.
Now, the woman on TMZ said when there's hollow or a ring, she said that means there was oxygen in it, is what I think she had said, right? And here's the other thing about being on blood thinners. We went to another expert before that had said, we listened to them, and she said that it doesn't impact blood viscosity in the way that the name would suggest. Because a lot of people have said, oh, blood thinners, you'll bleed much more rapidly or a lot more. And I think they disputed that. I don't remember exactly who that was, but I do remember hearing that.
And that's because there was actually air in that blood. There was bubbles, and the bubbles burst. And that's why you see just the ring. Okay, so this definitely came from her. She coughed it out. There's very little in terms of directionality in terms of the larger droplets, but the smaller droplets you can see some of them are longitudinal. They're like oblong, so that tells you the direction that the blood was moving when it hit this surface, and not all of them are, and that was caused by the fact that she coughed out this blood, and it kind of went out in a bunch of different directions. So I believe that this shows us a situation in which Nancy coughed up blood, some of which was sort of had maintained its integrity. Some of it was bubbles that popped. And it's really important to know that this indicates that she was likely within a foot of the ground. Her face, her mouth was within a foot of the ground, probably pointing almost straight down at this point. And
so, chat, anyone else remember that other blood spatter expert we listened to before? I think it was a woman, but they were talking about the blood thinners part and how they said it's misleading, that title.
So I would assume that meant that she was either hunched over completely or she was on her knees and hunched over with her face in this direction. And then if you see the blood spatter, the larger spatter to the left of this image, there appears to be either a smudge in which someone had interfered with or after the blood was deposited.
Mason, I'm telling you, another person said it is misleading. I'm going to find it now.
Touched on that spot and then moved it. And then in the large splotch that is directly to the right of that, a little bit higher, there is a little bit of a tail going to the right. And if you notice in one of the in the middle sort of circular one that had air trapped in it, that it was a bubble, you'll see that there's also sort of a tail that goes to the right. And then the one below that and to the right, you'll see that also seems to be. So I would say her
if it was a professional, you're going to say a professional was wrong? There can be professionals with different opinions too, by the way.
Her body was to the left of this image. That's towards the front door.
Mhm.
And her head was facing away from the front door here, but almost straight down. Do you have any questions about that?
I want to introduce you guys to the sponsor of today's episode, Incogni. Identity theft is such a big problem. It happened to a couple of my family members, and it was really, really awful. So the part where it almost looks like blood spray, like I guess that would make sense from coughing.
Right. That's the medium velocity. The coughing, coughing it has pretty high velocity in terms of movement, but it's nowhere near the velocity of, say, a gunshot wound, right? So that's why we call it medium velocity.
The bigger, I guess, I don't know if you'd call them droplets, and the ones you're talking about where it looks like an air kind of bubble, but then there's some where they look like kind of normal blood,
right.
Bigger droplets. Do you think those are also coming from coughing, or is that a different injury?
No, I don't think it's a different injury. What I do believe is that it could be, it dripped out. So she may have coughed and then more dripped out afterwards. That's what it appears to be to me. And then
So typed in, the first thing I got in the answer, blood thinners, anticoagulants, or antiplatelets do not always cause major or noticeable increased bleeding, but they always increase the risk of bleeding by design. Because these medications work by slowing down the blood's clotting process, they make it harder to seal wounds, meaning that if bleeding occurs, it will take longer to stop. While increased bleeding is the primary side effect, it is not always a daily or severe occurrence. Here is a breakdown of the bleeding risks. And this is from the National Blood Clot. Where is the thing here? So nuisance bleeding, more common than life-threatening bleeding. Patients often experience minor inconvenient bleeding, such as frequent bruising, longer-lasting no bleeds, or bleeding gums. Serious bleeding. Rare but serious internal bleeding can occur, such as in the brain or stomach. Time factor. The risk of bleeding is highest during the first 3 to 6 months of treatment, with risks generally decreasing over time. So that's a factor too. How long was she on them? Individual risk. The level of risk varies based on age, lifestyle, other medications like aspirin or NSAIDs, and whether they are taking warfarin or newer, often safer options. So that's what they have to say about it.
Go to the next image, which is directly to in that first image, it was directly to the right of that first image. And as you can see, the doormat is to the left of this image. There are some more captures of droplets of blood and then bubbles of blood. And you can see them in the top center. You have 2 droplets of blood and 1 bubble. And then in the bottom, to slightly to the left, you'll see 1 droplet and then 1 bubble. And then to the right side of it, you'll see a couple more bubbles. And then you see a smear pattern. And that is because the blood that was deposited there was then interfered with. Someone may have stepped on it. Someone may have their hand or another body part may have contacted it and smeared it there. So I think if we go back to the first image that we were talking about, this tells a story of a snippet of time. And that is that at this point in time, that there's the highest likelihood is that she.
And so what I'm seeing more of here is that it takes longer to stop as opposed to like quicker. That's what I've been seeing.
Was either down on her knees or hunched over completely with her face very close to the ground and coughing out this blood. And then after that, where the blood pattern then disappears, I believe that she was likely picked up and carried the rest of the way, perhaps with her face up, so that there was no more blood deposited on that walkway. So, Brian, have you been able to confirm whether or not there was actually blood spatter patterns inside the house?
What I've been told is no, that the only blood is what we see outside the front door.
Yes. So this is what Brian has said, only on the front porch, right? He's been consistent on that fact. Ashley Banfield, on the other hand, has a source that said, nope, blood spatter similar to the pattern on the front porch on the inside of the front door. Now, she's the only one that said that. So who do you believe? Do you believe Brian Etten and his source or Ashley Banfield and hers? I tend to believe Brian Etten's, but how about you?
There have been some other reports from other journalists that they're saying they have a source that there is blood right inside the door, like you see outside. But my source said no, like that's not the case. It's just outside. So that's
okay.
What
Well, if there is blood spatter patterns on the inside of the door, that would indicate to me that she was, because of what Savannah told us, that her mother was taken out of her bed at night, right? I believe that she was threatened. She was controlled by, most likely, the gun that the offender had at his waist or his crotch area. And that he used the gun to threaten her, control her, and get her.
And again, they didn't go over how exactly she got the wound, but I wouldn't be surprised if she got punched or hit with a weapon in the face somewhere. Not like being shot, but like being like hit with a pistol, like a butt end of a pistol or something. That's kind of the impression I get, because a cough, that means what? It has to be some sort of facial wound, you would think then, right?
Her down to the front door. At that point, or shortly thereafter, she realized he was trying to take her out of the house. And like we definitely tell people, if an offender is trying to take you away from a location, he's trying to take you to a location where he has more privacy and control. And that never bodes well for the victim. That if an offender is trying to take you away from a location, then fight for your life with your life, because that's how dramatically your chances of survival diminish if someone is taking you away from a place where you were secure. So I believe that Nancy fought him either inside the door or just outside the door, depending on whether the first appearance of this blood spatter evidence is. And at that point, she was likely either blitzed with overwhelming force, punched in the face or the nose, and she began bleeding, and she went down either on her knees or just hunched over and then coughed up this blood, which is why we see this pattern.
There's a tragic image, but that sounds exactly right to me. Like there's being hit in the face, either with a fist or something else. And since she's 84, she goes down to her knees and like probably leans forward even more. And then that's where the cough comes, right? That's what I would guess is going on in that scenario. It's just sad though. It's just sad that someone would do this, right? Whether they're 84 or they're 14 like Celeste. Any which way, it's just not good. Shadow doesn't understand it either way. Shadow, by the way, is very pro death penalty. Sometimes I have to remind Shadow to be a little more, what's the word? Liberal, maybe. Shadow can be pretty ancient in his tactics. He's mentioned to me before on more than one occasion. He said, Jared, I bet you if we did public executions again, they would be pretty popular events, especially depending on the crime. And he even said, Jared, I think if they turn those spectacles into torture events, he said, I think they would still be pretty popular. And I said, Shadow, I think you're probably correct.
I think at that point, she was likely picked up by the offender, he or she having stepped in and smeared or another body part of hers touching the blood that she had coughed up already and smearing in the patterns that we see here. And then from that point forward, she was carried to whatever vehicle he had. And at that point, She was likely turned with her face up so that we see no further blood dripping from the face wounds that likely caused this pattern.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said. And I think last time you and I talked, then we talked once the recording was over. And you mentioned we talked about, if someone tries to take you and put you in a car, should you ever get in? And I was saying, well, maybe you get in and then try to negotiate. You said, no, you never. I mean, obviously with Nancy, she's an older woman. She didn't probably have much control. But you're saying, like, for people watching, you fight to not get in the car, basically.
Right. I mean, it's rare, but when, for example, it happened just the other day, a young girl was, I think, walking home from school or waiting at her bus stop, and a man came up in a van, got behind her, put a gun to her back, and ordered her into the van. Luckily, other students saw this happen and called the police. The guy took her in the van and went to a gas station, and for whatever reason brought her inside, and she mouthed the words, "Help me," to the clerk. The clerk got in between her and him and got him out of the store just as the police were arriving, and he was arrested. Now, that is a very rare set of circumstances. If there are people who witness you being taken away and can identify the offender, the license plate, whatever it is, you might have a larger chance of survival. But the fact that an offender is taking you to a place where they have more privacy and control, they literally are bringing you to a place where they have connections, and either they've been there before to surveil it, or this is someplace under their control. And both of those things mean that they might not want you to survive to be able to tell what happened and where it happened. So the best thing to do is use all your personal weapons, and that is biting someone, poking their eyes, ripping their ears off, whatever you have to do, kick them in the groin area, whatever you have to do, scream and scratch and fight, to do everything possible to not being taken into a place where they have more custody and control of you.
Do you think that there was more than, I mean, you've said before you thought this was one person. Do you still?
He called you a bastard, Julie, or an idiot? Well, Shadow says that he thinks that guy's a bastard for calling you an idiot, Julie.
Believe that, or do you think there may have been more?
Yeah, I think this actually indicates to me a single actor, because we don't see multiple steps through this blood spatter evidence. And if there were two people, let's say, you would think that one of them would have had control of her, complete control of her inside the house, and brought her outside and would not have lost that control. But here she's clearly on the ground, coughing this blood up. And I believe if this is the only place where there's blood, this must be where she was attacked. And that must mean that she had just fought him at that point. And that was used to then control her. And then from that point, she was then lifted and taken away, which is why you don't see any other blood spatter evidence.
And that would make sense too, also, right? That's realistic. She didn't fight until they realized they were taking her away. And then as they're taking her away, she says, wait a minute, I'm going to fight this, rather than just going to go off meekly to my whatever they're going to do. So she tried to fight as they got to the front porch, and then maybe that's when they hit her. That makes sense to me. And especially since Brian's source is the one that said only on the front porch, that makes a lot of sense. Because they said no signs of a battle in the house. I tend to believe that's true. And if that's the case, then she did probably try to fight as soon as she got onto the front porch there. And that's when she was struck. That makes sense to me. And then they probably carried her to the top of the driveway where they went into the car. What's also wild about this case is that they were not able to get any coverage of the car or van or truck or whatever it was they drove her away in. Nothing. That is strange to me, isn't it? That in this day and age, I've also wondered, I said this in the very beginning, Why can't they zoom in on a freaking satellite image? Is it be too dark? Would that be the problem? But like, it's surprising to me they couldn't figure out a vehicle they escaped with. No trace. No trace of the vehicle.
What does it say about the person that they would hurt an older 84-year-old woman like that?
What does it say about the person? I'll answer you, Brian Etten. It means they have impaired empathy and they want what they want. That's what it means. At the minimum, it means that. Tina, thank you very much for the super chat, Tina. I've been on Xarletto blood thinners for over 10 years. What you're saying is so true. My doctor said, be careful, everyone reacts differently to being on them. Ah, that makes sense, Tina. I mean, what I was reading was just that it takes longer to stop bleeding when you're on blood thinners. But again, like you said, everyone can act a little bit differently to it. I think people would think, no, more blood, more. But again, I guess it just depends. But Shadow and I appreciate the super chat very much. Everyone else, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button, leave your DNA of choice in the like button, and throw Shadow a like vest, the way Brian Hooker should have sent Lynette Hooker a like vest. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Black Sheep Nation, we call them, by the way.
And maybe I'm just naive because I don't know. All of this is hard for me to wrap my mind around, like
Right.
punching an old lady, you know. But to me,
Right.
I'd have a much easier time like punching you and hurting you. The thought of like doing that to an old woman is like I can't even imagine. I'd rather just run away and abandon the whole plan, you know.
Right. Well, it just tells you a little bit more about his motivation, that there was a goal in mind and he was going to do whatever it took to accomplish that goal. And here it appears that that goal had to do with getting Nancy out of her home in the middle of the night. What else he planned on doing, we have no idea. Now, this goes back to the whole ransom note issue. If one or more of those ransom notes was real, and if it wasn't used just as a decoy, a distraction to throw the family and then law enforcement off, then money was obviously one of his goals.
Go gadget blood spatter analyst.
And in order to get that money, he would have to take her and have control of her and then threaten her life and then try to get the money. But the fact is that clearly that didn't actually happen in these circumstances. And
what it should be is go gadget blood spatter analysis. That's what I should have said.
And probably that was because he was not as prepared or as capable criminally as he thought he was. And I think some of that comes out in having a very unique backpack, which is.
So Rooster thinks JIm Clemente looks like looks like Inspector Gadget. That was why I did the Inspector Gadget references. For those of you who are old enough to remember Penny in his little book and Chief Quimby, for you millennials and older out there. Bettina, thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you for fact-checking this. So important. Love this channel. You're very welcome, Tina. Shadow and I are happy to spend a lot of time with you all here. It's a grand old time. Because once you get used to talking to people on the camera, it's just like second nature to you. You're like, in the beginning, it can be tough for people. It can be like uncomfortable or awkward. But then, it can become second nature over time. How about that? So thank you very much for the super chat, though. Again, super chats, super stickers, becoming a channel member, or gifting memberships. Great ways to support the channel. As I said, if we get to 150 likes tonight, which is a low bar, by the way, I will gift 5 memberships to the chat. Becoming a channel member gives you access to the members-only live streams. And what else? Just remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Only purchased or sold at Walmart's, having a backpack that had bright reflective straps on it so that he'd be easier to see, and having a face mask that allowed him to breathe and to lose hairs and to distribute his DNA wherever he went, as opposed to having a surgical mask, which would have covered that and prevented a lot of that from happening. So there are things that he did that he thought were sophisticated, but they were not criminally sophisticated, in fact.
You mentioned the ransom notes. Savannah said that she believes 2 of them were possibly legit. And we learned just in the last week from, those 2 went to the local TV stations in Arizona.
Right.
Learned from one of those TV stations, and there was the Bitcoin account attached to it. And you could look in the Bitcoin account, and they're now saying that there was a transaction on February 10th where someone put some money into the account, presumably the Guthrie family or FBI, a small amount. And there was a note, and I wrote down what the note said. It said, we are ready to talk, contact us. And we didn't really know that before. And then there was no activity after that. So what do you think that means? Because if the motivation was money and now you've got the Guthrie family establishing contact, but then no response.
Unfortunately, Brian, I think that perhaps she passed away in that time frame. Yeah. That he realized that he no longer had what they wanted, and probably then cut off all communication. They also may have, see, I told you before, I believe that the offender showed what was important to him in his actions. And he sent these 2 ransom notes to the media. Generally, that is the opposite of what kidnappers want to do. They don't want the media involved, because the media being involved means that the police will also be involved immediately. And that is something that really distinguishes this case from most other kidnapping cases that we've seen. And that is, the secrecy element helps them in terms of getting paid and getting away. The most vulnerable point is usually the point of exchange, where the person is traded for the money. And Bitcoin actually helps prevent that vulnerable point for the offender. So he could have actually done that, collected the money, and then disappeared. But for whatever reason, I believe they may have gotten nervous about the situation because of that communication. I don't know. I'm sure that the communication was made to try to sort of get them to communicate, and then in that communication to get more information from them and to verify, to get proof of life, things like that. So it's a very, it's just a tragic set of circumstances that he never replied to that that communication from the Guthries. But like I said, I think it indicates that something really bad happened at that point.
Okay. And that seems perfectly plausible to me. That, yeah, I mean, Nancy was probably killed right around then, and she hasn't been alive since the very beginning, more than likely. I don't think there was ever a time when there was notes that actually had her life in the balance. I don't think that ever happened. I think she was dead. And whoever did the notes, I tend to not think the notes were real, even though some people do think that, even though they think the first one was, or the first couple might have been, according to Nancy, according to Savannah, I mean. But I don't see it. But I could be wrong, but I tend to think they weren't real. And I think it was a hit against Savannah, or against Nancy, to punish Savannah. And why punish Savannah? Maybe envy, maybe a political point of view, maybe because of who her husband worked with, who we have heard so little about, which is surprising, honestly, considering he's the closest one to a political connection. It's odd that the people chose to focus on Annie and Tommaso, right? Considering Savannah's husband worked with Gore, Clinton, had that Parker Glover group. It's interesting no one's spoken about that. But that's just Shadow in mine's opinion. He happens to agree with me on this too.
What do you think is going through, I say his, I mean, we're assuming it's a man, mind now?
Well, I'm pretty
months
sure
later.
that was a man we saw in the video.
Yeah.
And I would be pretty confident saying that I just don't see any evidence of other people involved. Now, could there be other people involved? Sure. Could they have been involved and not at the scene? Sure. But there's no evidence to me that there are more than one offenders here. For example, if there's 3 different shoe print patterns in the blood stains, spatters, that would tell me that's something. But they may get 2 different kinds of DNA from the house that seem to be associated. But I just don't see that. I'm not aware of any of that evidence.
So he says there's only one person involved. That might be one of the few things I disagree with him on. I tend to think it was 2 people, maybe 3, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2 people at least. He says there's not much evidence for that. To which, sure, I would say I don't think there is really any direct evidence of it, right? But again, just because there's not direct evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen. So, for example, Brian Hooker is a great example, right? Right now, there's no evidence to charge him with murder, right? But you look at the timeline, you look at his past, there's a lot of things that would seem to point in that direction, right? But even so, there's no clear evidence to charge him. So, something to keep in mind.
So I would withhold any judgment about whether there were more than just the one person we knew. But what is going through his mind is likely, did I actually get away with this? Was I able to permanently conceal her body? And will there be any way that they won't be able to tie it to me? I think knowing and I would say absolutely watching every bit of coverage that there is on this case, perhaps even talking to people about it to try to find out more information, or even setting up an alibi with other people. In other words, that he was somewhere else and could not have been involved, those kinds of things. But I do believe that he likely has done or is doing everything he can to change his appearance, to change the appearance of his car, whatever vehicle he used, maybe get rid of it, sell it like Rex Heuermann did, get as much distance between himself and this crime scene as possible, and also as much distance between himself and the victim as possible. So leaving town for an emergency, staying away for a period of time until everything calms down. But I firmly believe that the mistakes that this offender made during the course of committing this crime and afterwards, and even before actually committing the crime in the pre-attack surveillance that appears to have happened, that he will be caught because of that. And it may be DNA through forensic genetic genealogy. It may be because somebody notices his behavioral changes. It may be because he leaked out information before and after these events that are going to tip somebody off, and they're going to call law enforcement.
Again, though, that really depends. I mean, what mistakes? Okay, he was on that surveillance camera, but so far that hasn't been enough for anything. How about DNA? Well, not much. Not much that's led to anything yet. So I guess you can say, was it a mistake that he's even on the porch cam? I guess, but not a mistake that's gotten him caught as of now. He's made no mistakes that have gotten him caught. So let's remember that part too. Now, and I said, would he be acting differently? To me, that all depends on what his personality profile would be. If he's more of like a psychopathic person, which, let's face it, someone who does this is more likely to be that, they're not going to act in the normal ways other humans would. Like they might be guilt-free about it. I mean, look at Ted Bundy, look at all these other serial killers out there, whatever. Did they seem to be like racked with guilt for what they did? Or was it more like the opposite, that they were actually thrilled with what they did? The BTK killer was honored with what he did. He was proud of himself. And what got him caught was he didn't think he was getting enough recognition. Basically, he wanted to compete with the other person. He was upset that they were pinning some of the crimes that he did on this other person. And it made him feel less special as a serial killer. True story, by the way. So, again, not everyone's going to look and seem different, right? Because not everyone's the same. People have different temperaments, different levels of empathy. Some people have personality disorders. Just something to keep in mind.
If he's more of an amateur, as you say, and because he made these mistakes, does that mean he would be more paranoid now, less confident?
I believe so. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because,
I don't agree with that. It depends. If it wasn't a personality disordered person and is a normal person, I mean, maybe then he'll be more paranoid. But if it was a disordered person, I don't know if you can count on that. Like, think about the mobsters. Think about mobster movies, for crying out loud. Goodfellas, Sopranos, Casino. Did any of those people seem like they were racked with guilt for what they did? Even when Tony kills Christopher, did he seem like he was racked with guilt? He was more like annoyed that people were even feeling bad for Chris. And he was trying to get people to see it like, oh, wasn't it a good thing that Chris is actually gone because he was a nuisance? Or Tommy from Goodfellas, did he feel guilt? When he was hanging out with Robert De Niro's character, Henry Hill, and his mother, and Billy Batts was in the trunk, did it seem like he had much guilt going on at that point? No. They were laughing about it because his mom painted a picture of someone that looked like him. He goes, hey, that looks like one of our friends over there, doesn't it? And Robert De Niro's like, yes, it does. Jimmy is his name in the movie. Oh, yeah, it does. It does look like him. So I'm saying this to illustrate the point. Not everyone's going to feel guilt. Not everyone's going to be paranoid about it. Henry Hill might have, but not Tommy, and not Robert De Niro's character.
That's why he would try to change as much as he can to create not only distance, but appearance differences, so that, and that could be to himself and as well to his vehicle.
And there's been some concern. I mean, the sheriff has said, we have concern the person could do this again, but it sounds like, based on your profile, at least to me, that's probably not likely.
I would say that I don't see really any indication that he's done this before, and therefore I don't see any indication that he'd do it again. However, this could be because we generally see in serial offenders, we generally see an escalation from precursor crimes. For example, in this kind of case, those precursor crimes would be peeping and burglaries. And then maybe this was the first time he escalated to actual abduction. But it's very difficult to know that from the amount of information we have. I mean, I would love to know all the information from the crime scene.
And this is what I think also. I think the people that did this, I think, were hired. I don't think they were hired from a cartel, but I do think they were hired in a way. And so what kinds of people are hired for something like this? Criminal, Machiavellian, disordered, exploitative, impaired empathy, right? You wouldn't be for hire if you weren't those things, right?
It would be much easier to make that determination then. But I do believe that his motivation was strong, that he carried this out even despite the fact that at some point she did not actually cooperate, but he was able to control her after that, before and after that incident where she most likely stood up to him and tried to fight him or refused to go any further. And I think that it could be, in terms of motivations, that strong motivation could have its basis in a few different things. One could be basically this financial reason, and that could be enough. That could be the sole reason. And if that's the case, generally that's either because he was aware of her connection to Savannah and thought that this family has a lot of money, or because of the location of the house, that this house indicated the family has a lot of money. But he must have engaged in either pre-attack surveillance, or he had some contact with this family in the last months or years, in which he determined that Nancy lived alone and was vulnerable, and because of her daughter, that the daughter would be willing to pay significantly for the return of her mother.
Yeah, it seems, financial motivation makes the most sense. But I did wonder when we learned that this person never responded in the Bitcoin account when the Guthries, it seems like, reached out. It made me wonder, could the person be wanting to like torture them in a way, like mentally, like by
Yes,
not
well,
responding?
that's the other motive, which is a potential stalking motive. In other words, generally people who engage in stalking have some fantasy that they've built up in their mind that this person that they're fixated on should be with them and should listen to them and should pay attention to them. And when they don't get that kind of reaction from the person, then they can escalate. And this could be an escalation to get the attention of Nancy. Excuse me. This could be an escalation to get the attention of Savannah. And it certainly did accomplish that goal, because Savannah made direct pleas to the abductor and was listening to the abductor at that point. And so that in and of itself could have accomplished, seeing the pain and suffering in Savannah's face, that could have accomplished what this offender had wanted to do, because he may have gotten angry about her not paying him attention, even if he never actually reached out to her and the fantasy was all in his mind. That could be what motivated this. It could also be that he had some tangential connection through working on the house, the pool, the yard, or delivering, or even Ubering or lifting Nancy. All of those interactions could have innocently given him information that he then used to pull off this crime.
And you mentioned like Savannah's emotions. I mean, just because you work with so many victims too, I've wondered, her just being in this limbo, not knowing what happened to her mom, not knowing who's responsible, not knowing whether that person could be a danger to her and her family. How do victims like deal with that? How have you told people to cope with that? Because at least, I mean, if her mom was found and it was awful and sad, and her mom was, at least, I guess there's some kind of resolution. But when there's not, I mean, she's gone back to work. How do you do that?
It's extremely difficult. And I've been amazed over the course of my career at the strength and resilience of some of the surviving family members, just being able to go on and on. And unfortunately, sometimes it's years or decades before anything is resolved, anything is known. Some of these families really suffer the entire time. Other people get into advocating and trying to protect people from this kind of crime. And I've seen it where 20, 30, 40 years later, the case is actually resolved because of increases in technology or someone in a deathbed confession, or someone who no longer is afraid of the offender comes forward and gives information. And the only hope is, hopefully for this family, is that one, they talk to victim services, get counseling, because this is a very, very difficult and very traumatic experience. And it's the only way, I think, for them to actually move forward without just completely falling apart.
When you're on the law enforcement side, this is something else I've wondered with Savannah, like at what point she may get frustrated with investigators. I mean, you know, because she's kind of an insider in a way. She's a lawyer. She worked at Court TV. She's covered a lot of crime. Like, she may be critical of them and the fact that this isn't solved. Does it ever get adversarial or awkward when you're on the law enforcement side and the victims aren't, you know, getting the answers that they need?
Sure, that can happen, but professional law enforcement will overlook that and continue to do their jobs and continue to cooperate and communicate with the family despite what their reactions might be. I think in the Colonial Parkway murders, for example, there was a long time when that's in Virginia, a case in Virginia where there's a number of different couples that were murdered along the Colonial Parkway. And those cases have slowly been.
In terms of the church friends, there is a small group that would watch Remote Church of Savannah in New York. How many people were exactly? I'm not sure how many exactly, but there was a small group. And there really isn't much for them to say besides she didn't come over. What time did they notice? And when did they call someone about it? Right? That's really it. What else would even be on the docket for them to say? Did they call family? I don't know. Like, what else is there for them to say?
Been solved through DNA. And it's been decades since the crimes occurred. But only recently, another one of those couples that were murdered by the same guy, it was proven to be connected to the other murders. So, but during that time frame, there was a lot of angst and anxiety expressed by family members because of the time delay, and especially after some of the crimes were solved and the others weren't, there was a lot of anger. You know, well, why isn't my case, you know, being solved? But in the end, you know, law enforcement professionalism should rule the day from that side of the house, no matter what the victims' families are saying or doing or going through, because our job in law enforcement is to find justice and not get involved in emotional or, you know, let's say any kind of retributional inaction. They should be working as hard as they can until the case is solved.
We've reported that nothing was taken from inside the house. There was no sign of an assault or struggle in the house. I'm curious what you think about that. And then also that we learned that the back door was propped open. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
All right. Well, I'll address the nothing was taken. The fact that nothing was taken from the house indicates that the motive was not burglary, that this is not a burglary gone bad. This is a directed, motivated abduction.
And remember, Nancy almost certainly didn't tell them anything at church because she was already taken before the morning of. There's nothing. She never reached out, probably. And if they interviewed these people, what are they going to say? Probably nothing.
Of an elderly woman, and an elderly woman who has connections to someone who's famous, and that may be the entire motive. It appears that with these two letters, at least being believed to be authentic, these two ransom notes, that there is also a motive that is financial, which would be, you know, very, very common in this kind of a case. Somebody's taken and they want money to let the person go. The fact that the rear doors were propped open could mean that the offender entered through those doors and wanted to make sure that if he needed to make a very quick exit, that the doors were open and he could just run out in a direction that he has already planned would be the safest way for him to get out. It could mean that he planned on taking her out the back door, but it really doesn't make much sense that he would then take her out the front door when there's a door and a gate. If the back door was propped open, it does tell.
I would think they would just think it's the shortest distance from the front door to the front of the driveway. They might have had a problem going out the back, and they probably thought, well, it's probably safer going out the back door because you're not going to get seen, or less likely to be seen. But for whatever reason, they didn't do it. And they probably said, well, shortest distance between here to the car is going out the front door. And the shorter the distance, the less likely to leave DNA somewhere, I guess.
Me that was his plan, to go through the front door. That must be where he had better access to the vehicle. But I don't see. Some people have indicated that they thought that was an indication of multiple offenders, but again, I just don't see any evidence of that.
Really, really appreciate Jim for taking the time to talk with me. Really appreciate you guys for following along and for subscribing. Again, kind of working on a couple of things that I'm going to have more on soon. That's why I'm in the airport right now, but I'll keep you guys posted. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, folks, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA in the like button. Throw Shadow a like vest. Buy Shadow a drink. Or some Hootie snacks, whatever you prefer. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And come say hello to the Black Sheep Nation, my flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Sometimes we refer to this group as the Shadow Cult, the Cult of Shadow the Night Owl. But if you're lurking, please remember to say hello. And as always, super chats, super stickers, becoming a channel member, or gifting memberships, great way to support the channel. And as I said, when we get to 150 likes, I will gift 5 memberships. That shouldn't be too difficult. I tried to make, since I learned this feature, an easy way to hit it. So we better at least hit that.
5:44 p.m. Lynette. Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Banfield and this is Drop Dead Serious. I got another big break.
Well, by the way, we've switched stories. We can go to that other slow talking guy too to talk more Nancy if you want. But now we're back on Brian Hooker.
In the Lynette and Brian Hooker story. And it is, again, a huge piece of the puzzle. We have received an exclusive photo that shows Lynette Hooker on the deck of the pool at the Abaco Inn at exactly 5:44 p.m. on the night before Easter, April 4th. Now, why is that significant? First of all, if you're just joining us on this particular story, thank you for being here. Love having you. Please don't forget to subscribe. Anybody who's watching, please don't forget to subscribe. Independent journalists, it really helps us to stay on this story. There is a whole backstory here. And we have an entire playlist that will get you up to speed on everything that's happened in this case. But I can't go back on it right away at the top of this podcast. I need to tell everybody who's watching why this photograph is so significant. We know at this point from other photographs that we've received exclusively that Brian Hooker is seen walking away from the Abaco Inn at 7 p.m., right at sunset. He's caught on a photograph walking towards the docks where his dinghy would be parked, but Lynette's not with him. We don't know where he left her. Did she go down to the docks first and leave him behind? Is he heading down to the docks first and She's back up, maybe using the restroom. We don't know. All we know is that we see him crossing the road and getting close to the pathway that takes you to the docks to get into the dinghy. He swears he didn't get into the dinghy with Lynette until 7:30 p.m. and then motored out the 12 to 15 minutes towards their yacht Soulmate, where hell on wheels happened. Suddenly 2 to 4 foot seas and gusts of, massive 18-knot winds bounced her off the back of the dinghy, and it was so dark. And the currents were so strong and the waves so high, I couldn't see her. And we got separated, and now it's dark, and I've floated 4 miles in 9 hours.
Shadow has wondered out loud to me, I wonder why Brian Hooker didn't throw her a life vest. I wonder why, since the water was pretty shallow, he didn't try to jump in and try to save her. I wonder why it didn't seem like he was too concerned with looking for her afterwards. And he had said, it's going to take a higher authority to get me to stop looking for her. And then, as SpongeBob would say, 1 day later, flying back to Sacramento, California. Shadow is very flummoxed by those things.
And beached up on Marsh Harbor. Okay, so first of all, it does get dark at 8 o'clock. But it will be really key to find out if Lynette was in that dinghy with Brian, if that photograph showed him getting into that dinghy at some point afterwards with her at 7:30. Even then, it's still really far-fetched, because you'd be back at Soulmate by 7:45 and it's still daylight. I was there at that time. I can attest. Still daylight. Doesn't get dark till 8. Does not take half an hour to get from the dinghy dock out to Soulmate. Maybe 12, maybe 15 minutes. So why does the picture of Lynette at the pool at the Abaco Inn at 5:44 matter? It's not so much the time, because we already know that at least Brian is walking towards the dock at 7. And we saw at least Lynette's daughter, Carly, and her boyfriend, Steve, saw surveillance video of Brian and Lynette walking at the Abaco Inn around 6:38 p.m. So why does 5:44 matter? It's not so much the time that matters. It's the timing that matters. When you zoom in to Lynette taking a selfie right there in the wind with the Atlantic in the backdrop, you can see on her left wrist is a very light patterned band, and what appears to me and many others as her powder pink Apple Watch that she is seen wearing in so much of her social media. I mean, it's such a powder pink Apple Watch that it almost looks like a white tan line.
The Sailing Hookers. Quite the name, the Sailing Hookers.
But there she is, holding up her camera, doing selfies at the left side of the pool as you're looking towards the Atlantic. That would be the north side of the pool, okay? And it sure looks like that is her powder pink Apple Watch. All that matters. Before I tell you the significance of her having the Apple Watch at this time, I also want to just draw your attention to the far right-hand side of the pool, the south side of the pool. There's Brian. He's sitting on a sun chair facing out towards the Atlantic, getting some sun at 5:44 p.m. That should tell you it's still suntanning weather at 5:45. I've been there. You could be suntanning at 7 and 7:30. It only starts to get a little dusky at about 7:45. And even then, I may or may not put my running lights on. Those are the red and green lights and the white light at the back of a boat. Red and green at the front of the boat, white light at the back of the boat. If I were driving my boat in the dusky conditions that I was in the Bahamas, right there at Elbow Key at 7:45, I may or may not put my running lights on. Just because I'm a super safe captain, I probably would, but you didn't need them. So now you know at 7:45 how light it is. You could absolutely see someone bobbing in the water. You would not get separated from them. And mark my words, my friend, the seas were not 2 to 4 feet. I've already showed you the evidence yesterday from the surveillance cameras just a quarter mile north of them at the Firefly Inn. The surveillance cameras show it's dead calm. It's lovely. Maybe a ripple as you come out from the bay, but it ain't 2 to 4 foot seas. It ain't roiling winds. No way, no how. And I will also tell you that one of the fire and rescue personnel went to the exact spot where Brian swears Lynette bounced off the back of the dinghy. He went there this morning. I'm recording this on April 22nd on Wednesday. He went there this morning. The wind, speed, and direction were identical when he went there. And he did this to do a test. And he said these words, I got to eat my words because I told you before I thought it was kind of rough, but I did an absolute replicate wind condition test, and it was calm. In the lee of Elbow Key, with exactly the same 18-knot winds blowing, it was calm. The waters were absolutely not 2 to 4 feet. They weren't even 1 foot. It was calm. So Brian's story that all of a sudden the waves were 2 to 3, 4 feet, and it was rough, and the wind was screaming, and oh God, I got separated and the currents took her away. No, I already told you no. But now it's been double confirmed by somebody who originally thought it might have been rough. And he said, no, I got to eat my words. It wasn't rough. It absolutely wasn't when I did the retest with the exact same conditions. Hell to the no. So if Lynette had that watch and bounced off, well, we'd start to know about the activity on her watch, because it doesn't matter where that watch is. It doesn't matter at this point regarding the technology.
Ask and you shall receive there, Tina. This is the selfie right here. Now, according to Mace in the chat, that the daughter and her boyfriend said that she seldom wears that. I don't know why, but apparently they said she seldom does, even though apparently it's been seen in some of her social media footage. But let's see.
Where Lynette is, her watch has her activity.
So that's it. They zoomed in more before.
Her watch knows what she did. If that watch by any chance ended up getting closer to
The water looks a little choppy.
the soulmate, that watch and her phone would reconnect with the Starlink that they had on Soulmate. So
I must admit, it does look like she has it on here. That white thing there. It does look like it, doesn't it?
if you're thinking, if you're trying to game what happened, it's entirely plausible that maybe Brian ain't telling the truth, right? Maybe she didn't bounce off. Maybe they made it back to their yacht Soulmate, maybe 12 to 15 minutes from the Abaco Inn. In calm water, I'm telling you, it might have been a few ripples, but it was not a screamer, and there were no toppling waves and nothing that would bounce you off the back. By the way, that's not bouncy. That's a hard bottom and fairly hard-hulled dinghy. It's not like a rubberized bouncy dinghy. And you'd have to go over some significant waves to be bouncing off the back. And then to be separated in this raging wind and waves, no. So let's just say they made it back to Soulmate, because that is possible. Well, then all the electronics are going to connect, right? Her watch, it's connected to her phone. Why do I know that? Because I spoke with her daughter, and her daughter said, absolutely. My mom's watch was connected to her phone because she used Find My Phone all the time. And I do it all the time too. Like I lose my phone all the time. It's just beside me. I do it all the time. I use Find My Phone, and apparently Lynette did too. So her watch, like mine, is connected to her phone. And so that watch, if it went back up on board Soulmate, would automatically connect to the Starlink. And so would her phone. So that data is going to exist. And if Brian had his watch and his phone, that's going to connect too. I mean, I don't know about his watch. It's different. It's not an Apple Watch. It's more of a Navionics kind of watch, which I have 100 questions about. But if Lynette got back up on board, there's going to be evidence of that. If she wrote an email, if she looked at pictures or sent a picture, if she did anything, there's going to be evidence of that. I am fascinated if we will at one time find out what the data dump is going to tell us. We don't know yet, but we will. We will at some point.
And what kinds of data can they even get from it, though? That's what I'd be curious about.
So here's the other story about the watch. Couple of months ago, Brian told Lynette's daughter, Carly, that he bought a brand new watch for Lynette because Lynette's battery was dying so fast. She needed a new watch. But he didn't buy her an Apple Watch. He bought her another kind of watch, and it didn't fit. And so she didn't wear it. And both she and Brian, Lynette and Brian, were going to give it to Carly because Carly was just there visiting her mom like just a couple months ago. And Carly forgot to take it with her when she went home to Michigan. That watch was green. And again, it wasn't an Apple Watch. And we know this. We know that when the Royal Bahamians, shall we say, seized some things, as you would in a police investigation when you're doing a criminal investigation, when they went on board Soulmate, they got a watch. They got Lynette's watch. But Lynette may have had two. There may have been that green watch that she was going to give to Carly. It was new. It was supposed to replace her Apple Watch, but she wasn't wearing it. So it might have been on board. But that pink watch, the Apple Watch that she wore in all her social media, and it looks like she was wearing.
So there's a pink watch and a green watch. The pink watch is the Apple Watch. The green watch is not an Apple Watch. Am I hearing that correctly?
Wearing at the Abaco Inn, which is the last place that Lynette is seeing alive. It looks like she's wearing that pink Apple Watch. So watch this space on what that's going to mean once the data all comes in. I can't wait. You know, the digital exhaust catches everybody. Caught Brian Koberger, the idiot. Took his phone and turned it off. Drove his own car to the murder scene. I mean, even a guy who's a PhD student in criminology fucked up his digital. So I'm thinking some dude who didn't even know how to load WhatsApp onto his phone, apparently, he's not the digital Einstein.
Yeah.
He may not have known if they made it back to Soulmate. It's just a very interesting piece of the puzzle, but we do know that the Royal Bahamians have one of Lynette's watches. Do they have the green one that was new, that was sitting on the boat because Carly didn't take it home with her? Or do they have the old one, the pink one, that was on her wrist just before Brian says she disappeared? Before I go on, I have one more thing I need to tell you about in this episode. Brian got himself a new lawyer, a Michigan lawyer from Grand Rapids. And she did an interview with ABC in which she said that Brian never hurt Lynette. No matter what Lynette's daughter and Lynette's mother, no matter what they say, Brian never hurt Lynette. Well, guess what you're about to hear? You're about to hear an interview with one of Lynette's dearest friends since 9th grade. And guess what? She has something completely different to say about whether Brian ever hurt Lynette, and she's got the photos. It is a very different story. Here's the tease. She says he absolutely did. These are just allegations.
Well, of course the defense lawyer is not going to say, oh, yes, by the way, Brian hurt and injured Lynette before and did this. Of course not.
They never proven in court, but there has been police activity. There are injuries that were photographed. Lynette said things to her friend, to her mother, about being injured by Brian and about wanting to leave him because things were bad on the boat. You're going to hear that interview in just a moment. Something else I want to bring up with you that really sticks in my...
One of the better things to see about all this would be all of this in writing, like getting the court documents of everything they have and like seeing it all laid out. Like, okay, this is this watch, this is that watch. What's it connected to? What can it find? It's like, you have to dig through every detail to find out what means what, because people make a lot of speculations and things too off of things that may not be accurate. So you have to be careful.
Craw, a lot of Brian's own words are coming back to haunt him, and I have his words because I got his texts with the fire and rescue guys. So you know that Brian's story is that Lynette went overboard, took the electric key by pulling the lanyard with her, and the other spare key was in the dry bag that somehow she grabbed as well because she was driving with her hand on the tiller, but still was able to grab her dry bag and grab the lanyard and bounce out the back. I know, I'm with you. It's horse shit. However, this is his story. She bounced off the back, somehow pulling the lanyard with her. There is no wristlet. There is no little wristlet like you're on a jet ski and you put a wristlet on. So if you bounce off, the jet ski stops and you can swim back to it. No, there wasn't. It was just a string that hung straight down. So you'd have to, as you're driving, right, the tiller, let's say I'm driving and I've got my hand in front of me and I'm driving towards you. So she's bounced because he says she's driving. So she would have to take her hand off of the hull in front of her that's stabilizing her, grab her dry bag, which she always puts down. And by the way, it's not the kind of dry bag you're going to wear. It's like a long briefcase. So if you do that, it's hanging kind of at your hip and falling out and not, it's just not safe. You put the dry bag inside the dinghy. And that's where she's always driving with it, inside the dinghy. But you'd have to take your hand off of the hull, right? And you'd have to grab the dry bag as you're falling out, hand on the tiller's coming this way, and you'd have to reach down and grab the lanyard and whoa, fall out. That is not happening. Ladies and gents, I've been in a boat for 58 years. That's not happening. I've driven any number of tiller boats. I've lost the tiller and almost fallen out. That's not happening. When you bounce out of a boat or you go over a wave or you're losing it, you're grabbing on for stability. You're not grabbing things down on the floor or a string on the engine. All that. But the dry bag is a question because no one's ever found it. No one's ever found the dry bag. It hasn't washed up on any shores in the Sea of Abaco. It's bright green, and it would show up with all the searches that they've done in the Sea of Abaco. And if you think that's crazy, it's the ocean. It is not. It is the Sea of Abaco. It's like a swimming pool. It's 4, 5, 8 feet deep. At its very, very deepest at high tide, it's like 15 feet. Huh? You can see the bottom. They grid searched everything. The Coast Guard grid searched that. They put drones over it. They did everything. They were in boats. It's not in the Sea of Abaco. It's not on the shores of the Sea of Abaco. It's bright green. It's a beacon. And if it sank, you would see it. Bright, bright green. But Brian had something really weird to say. Lots of weird things to say. Really weird thing to say about Lynette's dry bag. He's texting back and forth with one of the search and rescue guys because they had found the green, I call it like a swimming floaty because it's really not a rescue or a life jacket. It's what he says he threw to Lynette. It was one of the seat cushions that they sit on. You can see it in all the social media. He sits on a blue one often. She sits on a green one, or sometimes they are on opposite, but you can see what these cushions look like. When that green one was found just 100 yards south of where his dinghy washed up on Marsh Harbor, this is the text conversation. He asks the captain, was there a similarly colored dry bag nearby? It might have been slightly brighter than that seat cushion. It would have held about 10 pounds. I think it's a typo, but I think he means to say 10 pounds. So a medium-sized one with a black strap. He's asking the captain about, did the dry bag wash up with the floaty that I threw out that's green that you found? And the captain, well, he's not a captain. Brian's mistaken. He thinks that this fire and rescue guy is a captain. He's not a captain. And he kind of wondered why he kept calling him a captain, but he thinks since he welcomed him on board at one point of the search and rescue boat, maybe Brian got it in his mind that he was a captain. But anyway, this was the response from fire and rescue representative. I came and retrieved it just now. Brian then says, and this is key, wasn't there a subdivision or half a dozen houses back there? What are you talking about? I'm talking about finding the dry bag. Was the dry bag next to the green floaty? But now you're talking about a subdivision where there's a half dozen houses? It's just weird.
So she thinks that he's telling on himself, oh, like, oh, I thought it was here. I buried it here. Wasn't there a subdivision in 6 houses where I buried it? How are you finding it?
Why would the dry bag be all the way up in a subdivision with a half a dozen houses? Doesn't make any sense. I have no idea why he said that. It just sticks out to me. And it also sticks out to friends of Lynette. A couple of friends that I've been talking to who are avid boaters. They live aboard. They've been on board. I don't think they've tied up for 2 years anywhere. They've been on board their sailboat, and they have been following every single word that Brian Hooker has said, and they have been lining up all the inconsistencies. And one of the things that Blaine Stevenson has done for me and for you is to actually do a comparison. Roll up a dry bag with your phone and passports, because this is what Brian says Lynette had in her dry bag. Her phone, couple passports, the keys, the extra key to the engine, which is just a little, it's almost like a little plastic piece. And you can find their demonstration on YouTube and TikTok. They have the handle Sailing Cameo.
Yeah, and about a week ago or so, we listened to that 30-minute phone call or whatever it was, and there were all sorts of inconsistencies. But the other things I remember from that call were the other people seemed more interested in trying to find Lynette than Brian did. I thought that was pretty telling. They were like, oh, did you think of this? Did you think of that? And Brian was like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think of that. And it makes me think it's because he knows that, like, she's not going to be found. That's kind of the impression that I got from it. He knows she's not going to be found, so why would he even bother thinking of all these things that her friends and his friends would think? So the whole tone of that call was weird. It was like, did you really just lose your wife here? Because you're not really acting like it. So, and that's not even to mention the actual specific inconsistencies that were made as well. There are plenty of those too.
But this demonstration is great. Blaine waited for the exact wind, wave patterns, and everything, and decided to roll up a dry bag, much like Lynette usually does. As you can see in her dinghy, she just sort of rolls it up and it's got some air in it. Nobody really pulls all the air out of their dry bag. It's better to have a dry bag with air in it, because then it'll float if it falls in. Everything will stay dry and you'll be able to get it. So he rolls up a dry bag very loosely, and then he just tosses it in, and he measures everything that happens after that. How quickly he drifts from his boat, how quickly the dry bag drifts from him. And it should give you an idea of what it might look like in Brian Hooker's scenario. Take a look.
Okay. For the last 2 weeks, I've gotten inundated with what is a dry bag, how does it work, and what does it do in water. So just going to show you our standard dry bag size, much like everybody else's dry bag size. And all it is a plastic bag that you fold over, keeps your stuff dry. But what I have here is I have a speaker about the same weight as a GoPro. I got a cell phone. I've got a passport. I've got house keys. And instead of another passport, because I only have one passport, I'm just throwing in our daily tasks book. And then you just hold the bag open. Dump your items in, and then what we do is we just fold this over. Okay, you fold it over once or twice. I usually just do twice. I know my wife does like 2 or 3 times. I am not that stringent on it. And then you buckle it up like this. Okay, that's a dry bag. Now, it's not, as you can see, I didn't inflate it intentionally or anything. I just left the...
So this channel, Sailing Cameo, that's the channel that the other phone calls are on too. We didn't listen to it from this channel. We listened to the J for Justice version of it.
Natural air that fills in around the items you got in your bag. It's kind of limp. It's kind of how we all keep our dry bags. Again, some people fill it up, roll it over 3 or 4 times till it's tight. Other people are lazy like me. I figure for this demo, being lazy is more closer to failure being a potential, but then we're going to show you what it does in the water. It's going to take me a second to get in the dinghy. All right, we're in our dinghy. There's our boat. The wind is coming from the north. The current is coming actually kind of dead right now, but it is coming from the north, and we are drifting slowly away from the boat. And then this is our dry bag, and if we throw it overboard, that's what it does. Now, as you can see, my dinghy is out of the water more. It catches more wind. The wind is pushing me at a faster pace than the dinghy, or than the dry bag, sorry. The dinghy is being pushed because we get more windage. The wind is hitting us more, the wind's affecting us more. But the dry bag will just sit there and float, and I have complete confidence in it because I threw my cell phone and my passport in there. And as you can tell, there's the boat. We haven't made it that far. There's the dry bag, and here we are. That's how far away it has gotten in 1 minute. There's our boat. That's how far away we've gotten in roughly 2 minutes. And right now, if I wanted to, it would take me about a minute to take my anchor out of there, throw it overboard. But you can see the distance between my dry bag and my dinghy just based off of windage. Pulling up alongside the dry bag, scooping it up.
Let's see here. What do we got here, Mike? Thank you very much for the super chat, Mike. Shadow and I appreciate it. Has not been brought up. Did he have a cell phone? Did he have a cell phone? I don't think they did. I think what he said he did was fired a flare, is what he said he did. And I think he tried to did he try to radio for help? But no, I think also the SIM card stuff was a problem too, right? There was no SIM card, is what he was saying. Yeah, I have to basically study this entire case to know, because there's so many little pieces of information to know. But thank you very much for the super chat, Mike. Everyone else, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Once we get to 150 likes, I'll gift 5 channel memberships. What else? Say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Black Sheep Nation, we call them. And I go live almost every night to talk about true crime, current events, and psychology at a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel too. Looking for me, Julie. And then you say spank it. Oh my. Oh me, oh my.
Put it in the dinghy. Head back to the mothership. Then we open the dry bag. We unfold it. And if we look in here, we can see a little bit of water got in because I only folded it a couple of times. So that's a little damp. So, people want to know how a dry bag works. That's how a dry bag works. Will I now be folding mine over 3 times? For sure. But it'll even stay afloat while taking on a little bit of water.
Mason, make sure you've liked the video. Shadow needs to make sure of it.
But it will not float as fast as a dinghy. our dinghy takes on so much windage that items floating in the water are affected more by the wind.
Super interesting demonstration. My huge thanks to Blaine Stevenson and Sailing Cameo for doing that. Quick word from my sponsor. When was the last time you actually went to the doctor? Not Googled your symptoms, not probably heard the comments that Brian Hooker made on tape, right? Friends recording his own words where he's being asked, where were you coming from? Where were you going to? And he sort of rattles off this big, long answer. And in it, he just kind of rattles off that he just doesn't know the tides and the currents or some odd thing here. This is what he said.
So where were you guys coming from and going to? Because that's what I couldn't figure out in any of the Facebook articles I was reading, like how to do a grid pattern search. Like,
well, I don't really understand the currents and tides here. I kind of rely on Hopetown.
Well, that doesn't really square with Brian Hooker's own words that he wrote to the fire and rescue guys. Okay. Sounds to me like with the text I'm about to read you, Brian Hooker knew a hell of a lot about tides and currents. You ready? This is when he's talking to the fire and rescue representative about a place that used to be called Matlow's Key. Matlow was an old pirate. And recently, Matlow's Key has been purchased and it's under development. It's now called Montage Key. It's beautiful. And at some point soon, it's going to be finished and gorgeous. And I can't wait to see it at that point. But he's suggesting that it's possible some of the things that they're looking for, like maybe the dry bag or the ore that he lost, might have floated towards Montage Key because he thought maybe even Lynette had floated that way, saying almost certainly there's nobody on the key.
I'd be curious how the actual search is going in this case. How is the cadaver dog search going? Have they searched all the islands? You'd think something's got to pop up at some point, right? And these cadaver dogs, unless... And say he did bury her somewhere, right? Unless he buried her 30 feet deep, those cadaver dogs would be able to find her. So we'll see. You'd hope something turns up here, right? Because at this point, she's not alive, right? She's not alive. Unless she's pulled some sort of castaway out there like Tom Hanks. I don't think so.
Key on Easter weekend until maybe tomorrow. It sort of fits with the flood tide till midnight and the ebb tide after, along with that terrible east wind. So you know what flood tides are and ebb tides are at midnight and afterwards, Brian Hooker? You know what that is? Then why did you say to your friend on the recording when he's asking you, where were you coming from and where were you going to? Well, I don't really know the tides and the currents. I don't really understand them here. Bullshit. You know what a flood tide is after midnight and an ebb tide. You know. You lied to that guy when you were telling him all these details. Verbal logorrhea. Check yesterday's episode. It's unbelievable how much this guy said. And when it comes to the wind and the waves and the tide, well, I did a little research and I talked to the best of the best. I talked to these experts in drift patterns, and they've got the gear that tells you everything based on science, not based on opinion or based on the naked eye. The science of the drift patterns from the night of April the 4th, 7:30 at night, when Brian Hooker says she just bounced off the back in 2 to 4 foot seas and, gale force winds. Okay. So here's what I've learned about that from the experts. They have told me that they have run these drift patterns, and with the wind and the tide and the current as it was that night, there is absolutely no way possible, if Brian Hooker is telling the truth and Lynette Hooker went over the back in the place she went over, there is absolutely no way that her body would not end up in the Sea of Abaco, which again is a great big giant swimming pool. You'd see her, right? Or on the eastern shores of Elbow Key, through the Toulouse Cut on either the north or the south part of those shores.
This is good. So the Sea of Abaco or the eastern shores of Elbow Cay. Where is that on this map? I wish the seas were labeled.
The shores on the Atlantic. If she went out the Toulouse Cut into the Atlantic, the patterns would have blown her back onto the shore on either end of the cut, the south end or the north end of the cut. No other place. And if you want to talk about shark activity or anything like that, they accounted for that too. They have the word particle. Some part of Lynette, clothing, body parts, something would be in the Sea of Abaco or would have come up on those north and south sides of the Toulouse Cut on that eastern shore where the Atlantic is. So there you have it. The science, Brian. The science says it's not possible the way you told the story. Her body just wouldn't have completely vanished. At least not in the water. Which brings you on land, a whole other.
It also makes you wonder, though, like, what was he trying to get out of this? Is there a financial gain at stake here? Or did he just lose his cool from being drunk? And I don't know if you could even say just losing his cool. It's more of like a pattern of behavior. It sounds like of him doing this kind of thing, right? So maybe he's just drunk again and they're out there and he's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do this and just be done with it. I'm tired of her bitching and complaining. This is probably what he's thinking to himself. And then he does what he does. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happened at all.
Story. Was Lynette buried somewhere? That's a whole other question. And in a complete twist of bizarre irony, I want you to see what I noticed on a text message that Lynette's mother, Darlene, shared with me. It was a message that Brian sent to her the day after all of this horror, this tragedy unraveled, right? So this is Monday after Easter Sunday. Take a look at his profile picture. I nearly lost my lunch when I saw this. His profile picture depicts basically a problem if a man and woman.
Now, the question with this would be, was this his profile picture before as well? So, arguing couple, problem solved on the boat. You can easily see how Ashley's going to make this conclusion, right? Well, problem solved on the boat and by ending her life, right? Or a charitable interpretation would be husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend fight. You go sailing together and make up. Right? Again, but that's the charitable interpretation.
Women are yelling at each other and fighting. The solution is a sailboat. Not so sure that was the solution in this particular case. Okay, now I want to move on to this new lawyer that Brian has hired. Probably a good idea because, Brian, I do not like.
And Julie, that's a good question. Could he be a blackout drinker? No recall. Here's the thing. There's two different versions of the drunkards, right? Some people, they get to a point where they actually start blacking out from less and less. That is kind of a thing. The old wet brain almost, right? And then there's the people that tolerance goes way up. But as you get older, generally your tolerance goes down because your body doesn't break down the alcohol as well. I tend to think Brian's more correct about the blood on the front porch than Ashley, but that's just me. The opposite of love, Miss Kim, is indifference.
Your chances, right? Good thing you got yourself a lawyer. But this lawyer, her name is Crystal Marie Hauser. She's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I guess that kind of makes sense because he's from Michigan. He said he left the Bahamas to see his sick mother in Sacramento. I don't think he's staying with his mother. I'll just put it that way. Got some intel that he hasn't been staying with his mom. And this attorney did this interview with ABC in which she suggested that Brian Hooker has never hurt Lynette. Girl. Do you know Brian? Like his mother-in-law knows Brian? Do you know Brian? Like Lynette's besties know Brian? Have you seen the texts and the pictures? Here's how she put it.
Would Brian ever physically harm Lynette?
Absolutely not.
Given how much has been said about Brian Hooker, is there anything that you would like the public to know, those who consider him guilty?
I would ask those watching to treat him the way you would want to be treated, to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Does he have any plans to go back to the Bahamas?
To give him the benefit of the doubt. Well, of course, she'll say, remember, he's innocent until proven guilty. Never mind the domestic violence allegations. Never mind the strangulations of Lynette and her daughter. Never mind any of those things that your lying eyes might tell you. But Brian, rest assured, he did not do a thing. But of course, it's like you're listening to a defense lawyer. What else do you expect her to say? She'd be the worst lawyer in history if she said anything but this, right? So it's like, why is this news?
Bahamas to help with the search?
I imagine that is where his heart is, but I can't speak on whether or not that's what he will be doing. We all handle things in different ways. And be open-minded to the fact that just because Carly and Darlene are making these claims, there's absolutely no evidence to support any of the allegations. Absolutely none.
Well, I'm sure that Carly and Darlene won't appreciate being characterized that way. They're real close to Brian, right? Darlene is Lynette's mom. Carly is Lynette's daughter. They're desperate for answers about what happened to their loved one. They are more.
I mean, you can play that both ways, though, too, Ashley. Brian might not be thrilled about Carly saying that she thinks that he has something to do with it. But again, I tend to believe Carly because I don't know what her reasoning to be would be to lie. So chances are he very well did have something to do with it.
They are suffering. They have no idea where she is or what happened to her. But a lot of the things that Brian Hooker is saying just don't add up. Like total horse shit, if you ask me, because I've been there. The waves and the wind bullshit. That's what Darlene and what Carly are dealing with. Stuff you're saying that didn't exist. Double talk, backing off on things that you said, saying you don't know the current and the tides, and then knowing an ebb tide and a flood tide after midnight. Those are the things that Carly and Darlene are suffering through right now, Brian. And this lawyer, Crystal Marie Hauser, ma'am, with all due respect, I know you have your job to do, but you better get to know your client and his history a little bit better. And if you need some guidance, I've got that for you because I called.
I mean, Ashley's being ridiculous here, though. Like, what do you expect this defense lawyer to do? And if you even want to rub the salt in the wound, if you're the defense lawyer, you say, well, actually, Lynette Hooker was the one that was arrested, not Brian, by the way. That's what you would say, right?
Someone who knows Lynette intimately, has known Lynette since 9th grade, texts and communicates fairly regularly with Lynette. Lynette confides in this woman when things are going south, and they went south a lot. Rachel Shaw spoke to me about specifics, specific text messages, photographs with bruises, desperate attempts to leave Brian, get off the boat, get to the airport, changing her mind, going back to Brian. Let Rachel Shaw describe for you her experience with Lynette, the things Lynette said about Brian and her life with Brian on board, and even way before that. I will say this, these are allegations, not been proven in court. However, this is one woman's account of what her dearest friend told her regularly. Rachel, tell me about your relationship with Lynette.
I've known Lynette since we were.
All I'm saying about Ashley there is like she's expecting the defense lawyer to what? Almost self-incriminate Brian? Like, what do you expect that woman to say in an interview? And keep her job. Like, imagine if she goes up there and says, "Oh yes, I know Brian certainly did abuse and mistreat Lynette, and he definitely did strangle her, and he definitely did do this." It's like, are you trying to make him sound guilty or something? Like, again, who are you talking to? You're talking to the defense lawyer. So you can't expect anything more than what that person did in this example. It's obnoxious to the people that just want to hear the truth, right? But the defense lawyer, that's not really what they do is only sometimes congruent with the truth.
We're in 9th grade. I'm sorry. Very long time. We were friends. She was 2 years older than myself. She graduated 2 years before me, but I mean, we never lost contact. She was there for me I remember her coming to my homecoming when I was a senior and I was on homecoming court. Just probably one of the most supportive friends I've ever had. Sure, we would go weeks, even months without talking, but we always kept in contact, and I always knew when something wasn't right. We lived together for almost, I think, a year and a half, maybe 2 years in the early 90s. I was in her first wedding, her first husband. I mean, she's my best. I mean, she texted me the Wednesday before she disappeared. I was kind of mad at her. She was like my sister. Yeah, I wasn't mad at her. I was just a little mad at her. But
Because she hadn't been in touch?
no, because I knew she needed to come home, basically. I knew she was.
If Mason was your defense lawyer, he would just tell you the truth about the client, and then your client is immediately arrested. So Mason can be Forrest Gump's lawyer, because Forrest Gump's like, "Oh, I want myself a smart lawyer. I'm going to get someone who tells the truth like Mason, and then I go straight to jail because my IQ is below the normal level."
Painting that picture that something was off. And I knew that from previous conversations that we had earlier in March. And I felt like she was very worried about what was going on in my life, which my life is very boring, very boring. She's very worried about my boyfriend he's got a traumatic brain injury. So I take care of him, and it gets kind of stressful. And I have a job in healthcare, very stressful. I am, I work a lot. And she was.
Mason, are you trying to demonstrate that your IQ is around Forrest's level?
Really trying to get me to come down there. I'm in the process of getting my passport and my real ID. And she was telling me, "I want you to come down. You need to get away. You need to take some time off. You haven't had a vacation." And I haven't in a very long time. And I was thinking about it, but then I also knew what was going on, like just prior to that conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, talk to me more about that, because you said that you knew what was going on. You were kind of mad at her. What do you mean by that exactly?
She called me, to be exact, it was I think it was the 12th, because I have a text message that I had sent her right after that conversation. And she was
March 12th?
Yeah, just this last March. And she was upset about things that had went on, and she was on a limited amount of time because Brian was out paddleboarding, and she had sent me a message saying he's out paddleboarding, so I knew I had to call. Excuse me. That's a lot of times how I would know I needed.
Mason's being mocked for asking dumb questions and making speculations about Tommaso as well.
Call because, oh, she needs to talk now because she's alone. And I knew there was like no privacy, and she couldn't really just call me, you know. She couldn't just jump in the car and go to the store and make a quick call. So in any case, she had called me and she had told me about some things that had happened. I think they were in Florida, and it was something to do with their grandson telling them something in confidence, and Brian wanting to keep the secret. And Lynette thought the grandson's mother should know. And she said she told the mother, and it was a big to-do. I mean, to give you exact details, I know I was doing, I was working while I was listening to that conversation. And I was like, what are you talking? And she said, yeah, well, we had been drinking a little bit lately. And I said, no, that's, no. She said, I know, we're quitting again. We just can't drink. We just can't do that. And, you know, things get really bad when we drink. And I said, I mean, I don't think it matters either way. But in any case, she said, things are bad, really bad. And I need your advice. I said,
Shadow is admiring my clapbacks, is what Shadow is doing.
well, Lynette, what do you want? What do you need advice on? And she said, I'm 10 minutes from the airport. I said, get on the plane. And then
She was on her way to the plane,
she said,
and she
10
called
minutes from the airport. That's what she said. That's what she said. We always,
you know what?
spoke
That
a
makes
little
sense.
code,
Honestly,
and I said,
I'll tell you what,
yeah.
where that boat was moored,
Mhm.
all she needed to do was get to the dock, and it is about a 10-15 minute taxi to the
Right.
airport.
And I also knew that. But in my mind, it was, I'm going to say I didn't know that until after the fact. But I had said, well, get on the plane.
Shadow is my Wilson, by the way. So Shadow is to Jared what Wilson is to Tom Hanks's character. Chat, rank for me your top 5 Tom Hanks movies. There are so many to choose from. Top 5 Tom Hanks. Or in the for space purpose, do your top 3. Top 3 Tom Hanks movies. What are my top 3? I guess you got to put Forrest Gump in there. Forrest Gump. And then I do like Catch Me If You Can. Oh, that's mostly a Leonardo movie. Maybe Green Mile. What else? Would Castaway hit there? I don't know. It's close. He's got a lot of pretty good movies. None that I would say are my like absolute favorite, but he's got a bunch of them that are pretty good.
That's my advice. Get on the plane. If things are that bad, if they're getting the way they were, you get on the plane. And in any case, she didn't. The next day, she texted me a picture of her.
No, what you shouldn't be shocked about, Mason, is you are the one being antagonistic towards me, and now you're trying to play the victim. You're like, oh, don't ask for likes. Stop doing this. You sound dumb. You sound silly. You sound ridiculous. Not funny. And then when I clap back, all of a sudden, oh, I'm surprised you're doing this to one of your subscribers. It's like, dude, no. Shadow and I do not play that one bit. You're a millisecond away from being blocked.
For dinner and said he made dinner. And I was very upset and did not text her back because I was like, well.
Mason says, I might not be a smart man, but I do know what trolling is.
If things get as bad as they were 2 years ago, you're going to be sorry. And unfortunately, that's the information that I had sent you. the pictures.
So what happened 2 years ago? And maybe describe for me, you've mentioned things were bad, but I'm not really clear on what she said to you about everything all the way along, how things were bad, in what way, what was the relationship with Brian like, and all the times that she confided in you, what were the things she said and told you about?
The violence, well, 2 years ago, he had they had gotten into a big fight when they were drinking, and he choked her, and he had her pinned against the seat. He bruised her back really bad when he did that. And the next day told her, and she had called me, and I remember talking to her when she was still there. She was still on the boat, and very upset. And she said, he told me that he wished he would have finished the job and thrown me overboard. No one would have ever found me.
Did she text it, or did she call you and say
She called
that?
me and said that. She called me and said that. She did not text. She barely texted any of this stuff because she was so private. And in a way, it's hurt her, at this point, because she didn't.
Me being Forrest Gump is me being myself because I quote movies all the time. So you can't tell me I'm not being myself when I am being myself.
She kept things and she would always say to me when she was on the verge of leaving, I'm so embarrassed. And that, I think, is why she kept things so under wraps, because she was so embarrassed by thinking that she had failed in some way. This is embarrassing.
Did she call you about other times and describe other instances of violence?
There was the time when she ended up having to go to jail. That time she called me after that. She told me about what happened then, and she said that she was defending herself. I remember it was because of a locked door, something to do with her daughter and his older son, a locked door, and something happened in that regard. I don't remember the story exactly, unfortunately. And it was a phone conversation. And then there was another incident she had called me about.
Well, just to clear up that last incident, she was arrested because he had the version that I have seen and been told about from sources was that she was arrested because he had blood in his nose, but she had marks that came out later.
Yeah.
And they never.
Now, what they're talking about here is the part that Lynette got arrested for. Now, depending on who you believe, Brian Hooker strangled her. And then Lynette defended herself and punched him. Now, since the police probably didn't understand domestic violence, they saw Brian Hooker with a bloody nose. And they said, oh, well, he's got more damage than Lynette does, so we have to arrest Lynette. But that very well could have been a very unfair thing to do, depending on the circumstance, right? But again, if there's no video of it all, it becomes more difficult. But you can look at the bigger pattern. And if the pattern is of coercive control and domestic violence, and when you add booze to the mix, it just makes everything worse. So that's the thing. And generally speaking, though, as the man, if you're more physically powerful and strong, that does come with certain responsibilities. That doesn't mean you can't be abused, but still, when you are more powerful, that does come with more responsibility.
Or charged or prosecuted this case at all against her.
Mm-mm. Yeah. She dropped it. They dropped it. It was a drinking fueled fight. And she had said, it's the alcohol. She would tell me that before. And as far as I knew, they were not drinking at all. The month of March, after, because she had said that as long as we don't drink, we're fine.
What was the next episode that you were about to mention before I jumped in?
Sorry.
That she told you about?
She had told me about him getting into it with his oldest daughter, Jessica. something happening. And I don't remember what that was centered around at all. I just remember that he had to go to court for that a lot. And she was very stressed about it. And at the time, you know, she supported him and she kept a lot of that under wraps. But I didn't find out about that, like the actual physical acts that happened, until he did it, until 2 years ago. So when
and it's a long time ago. This is the incident that went to before a jury. The jury acquitted him, but there was an allegation that he had choked out his 12-year-old daughter, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And she kept that under wraps, and you only found out about it a couple years ago?
Right. When she got choked, I remember her calling me though during the court proceedings in 2015. But I don't remember her telling me whether it was abuse during that time or not. I honestly, but I do. And then but I do remember her telling me about it after he had done it to her, after he had choked her. I said,
and tell me a little bit more about the incidents on the sailboat, because I think you'd mentioned to me off camera that she would usually text you, "Are you up?"
Yes.
And that was often a code for I want to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
What were some of the instances on the sailboat that she confided in you about?
Just the drinking and the fighting. And she'd say it would just get vicious and he would be.
So if you're in a case like Lynette Hooker, what I would say is hopefully she would find a channel like mine so you can get out and say, okay, this dude, whether he's a narcissist or not, the label doesn't matter. The behaviors are what matters. So what are you going to do? You leave the scenario and don't continue like drinking it up with him, because let's put it this way. Drinking on a regular basis isn't really helping too many relationships, at least drinking to get drunk all the time. So it's just not the best. So, but now it's unfortunately too late for her, more than likely. But this is for the other people out there that are in a similar situation. They're probably not watching me, but maybe though, maybe there are people in the true crime space that are in situations like that. Maybe that's certainly possible.
Very, very mean.
Physical?
Yeah, she would sometimes take the blame. She would say, well, I would like poke the bear. I push the argument. I fight back, is what she would tell me. And I would say, I think your best way to fight back would be to leave.
But did she talk to you about him being physically abusive with her on the boat?
Yeah. Me too.
What would she say?
Definitely told me about
There's the big one. So she asked her, did Lynette ever tell you that he was physically abusive on the boat? Now, granted, I'm not one of those people that compares the levels of abuse, emotional, physical, sexual. They're all bad. They're all bad in their own way.
the choking, and they would like throw things at each other, stuff like that. I mean, the only.
And remember, choking, strangulation, 700 to 900% more likely that that person kills you if that's what's going on. Don't forget that. So the strangulation stuff is no joke.
The only one that sticks in my mind very clearly was the choking. That was it. And
describe what she said about that.
She said he choked her to the point to where she thought she was going to black out. Get off there. You're going to chew through that cord. She said, he choked me to the point to where I felt like I was about to black out. And then he released me. And the next day said, I wish I would have finished the job and thrown you overboard. And I said, you have to leave right now. Right now. She left, went to her mother's for about 2.5 months, somewhere in there. During that time, she was job hunting, but he was continually trying to get her back. I do have a text message that he had.
And why does that happen? Because even if they fight all the time, right? What do narcissists want? Now, I won't call him a narcissist, but narcissists in general, what do they want? They want to be in control. They want narcissistic supply. So even if you're fighting all the time and they seem miserable with you, that is still serving a purpose for them. So their ability to devalue you, put you down, belittle you, abuse you, that does something for them. And when they lose it, they want it back. So it can confuse people. Why do they want me back after we were fighting all the time and we were so miserable? That's why. Because you were still serving a purpose for them.
Sent to her, I'd have to dig for it, but I could find it, that she had sent me a screenshot of that he had sent to her when they had split up about Rosie wanting to see her, and she clearly asked him to she said, I do think
His daughter Rosie.
Yeah.
He was saying my
After
daughter
the
Rosie wants
split,
to.
And by the way, folks, please remember to like the video because likes are free. And we get to 150 likes, I'm going to give away 5 memberships for the channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel too. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat, the Black Sheep Nation. Some of them might be having a couple dranks themselves. Dranks and true crime. Nothing like it.
Rosie still wants to, talk with you and still, wants to be close with you. She really loves you. And it's a very long text. And then she said, I love Rosie very much too, but I also think this is a clear manipulation of my feelings. Stop it. And I mean, and he did this throughout the time she was with her mother and would invite her down, come have a date with me, and love bomb, basically.
She would tell you this, or she
Love bomb. Sounds like someone's been listening to the space here, right? Love bomb, not the true crime space, but the narcissism space.
texted it to you.
She told me. She'd tell me. I do have the one text though.
Is that when she photographed bruises on her back and said, I'm taking these pictures so I remember?
Yes, and she had sent it to me. And I was like, what the? And I just don't erase anything.
So Lynette would say that to her, the love bombing. So maybe she did have a little bit of awareness about the space. But that goes to show you also how hard it is to leave. Some people say, oh, it's just so easy to leave, and that's it. But on average, it takes 7 times. On average, it takes 7 times to leave. So it's a trauma bond. A trauma bond is just like a drug addiction. And then you add an alcohol addiction on top of it, just makes it even harder to stop. Makes it even harder to get out of there. So it's not as easy as some people would like to make it seem. That's not saying it's impossible, but it's certainly not as easy as some would make it seem.
And I have that text message. I knew I had that. But I was like, good. I'm glad that you aren't going to go back. Well, unfortunately, she did. And I was in Florida and we had met for dinner. There's a picture of us on my Facebook that is her and I. That was the last time we had been together, just her and I. And it was the day before she went back to him after that incident. And we had I remember we were at, what is it called? Catfish Johnny's in Florida. And we had dinner together. I was down there for work and she was there with her mom. And her mom is like 20 minutes from my work when I'm in Florida. And she said, she was going to go back and what do you think? And I said, Lynette, if anything ever happens to you to where you can't speak for yourself, you come up missing, anything happens to you, I am going to point the finger at Brian because of this. And I do not think you should go back. But if that is what is going to make you happy, I support you in your decision to try again. And, I'm sure there were several more incidents that we know nothing about because, again, she was so private. So private.
They go back because it's the drug addiction part of the trauma bond, right? In a trauma bond, you're getting intermittent rewards. So you never know what version of them you're going to get. And it's awful a lot of the times, but occasionally there can be some highs as well. But when you leave, you go into withdrawal from that person. So again, then your brain can start playing some tricks on you when you're in withdrawal, like, oh, maybe it wasn't that bad, or well, maybe it's better than being alone, or fill in the blank. And initially, you might get like a dopamine rush when you go back to them initially. You make up, have makeup sex, whatever, and you're like, oh, this is so much better than being alone. But then quickly, it goes back to being awful again. And that's the pattern. The pattern is that. Because also during that time, the abusive person will love bomb Hoover. They'll say all the things that you always wanted them to say. They'll say they're sorry. They'll say they'll change, or I'll get sober. Fill in the blank with whatever it is. They'll say it. Doesn't mean they mean it, but they'll say it. And they'll say it as a way to manipulate you and to get you back. So I guess why I say, once you realize that this is the pattern, this is who that person is, there's no emotional safety there. That's it. And this is where people get uncomfortable, right? There are people that aren't familiar with the narcissism space. They get uncomfortable putting people in a box. Like, no, everyone can change. Everyone can do better. But in fact, no, you cannot work on that assumption when it comes to abusive people. In fact, you have to work on the opposite assumption. They are not going to change. They are not going to do better. And unfortunately, that's just how it goes with them. The people that I've seen that are truly a narcissist, they're not changing. And that's a bitter pill for some people to swallow, but it's 100% true.
I know that even from living with her. She was so private. She confided in like nobody. And I didn't tell anybody because she trusted me. You know, other than her mother and I talked a little bit, but I would even keep a lot from her mom just because this is my friend and I wouldn't want her, you know, the same thing doing to my, but immediately when her mother called me and told me what had happened, unfortunately, my mind went right to 2 years ago. And when I told her that, and the next day, I had called her when I was back in Michigan, because that was my last night in Florida. I flew home to Michigan, and my boyfriend had another accident while I was gone, or when I got home, and I was on the phone with her, and she said, by the way, I told Brian what you said about you're going to point at him if something happens to me. And he said, that's fair.
She told you that's fair.
He said, that's fair. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And again, you said to your friend Lynette, if something happens to you and you turn up missing, I'm going to point the finger at Brian. If you turn up
missing or anything happens to you to where you can't speak for yourself, I'm going to point the finger at your husband, at Brian. And she told him I said that, and he said, that's fair. And I'll never forget it because it sent chills down my...
Did you hear that? So Lynette said that she said, if anything ever happens to me, they're going to point the finger at you. And Brian said, that's fair. Now, again, this is hearsay. If you're in a lawyer, they will say, well, where's the evidence of this conversation? This is all hearsay. But again, it still adds to the case, I would say.
My spine. And that was 2 years ago. And I was like, yeah.
What are your thoughts about Brian's newest lawyer, who has apparently been retained in Michigan, saying Brian has never hurt Lynette?
I have proof otherwise. I have the pictures, and I did give all of that to the U.S. Coast Guard too. Yeah. So, yeah. And I know otherwise. I know he choked her that time almost to the point of passing out, which to me is almost killing her.
As far as instances of abuse, you've mentioned the one where you say she told you that he choked her to the point of near passing out. It caused bruises that she photographed
on her back.
Were there other instances that she described to you, either by text or by phone?
Not that she described to me by text or by phone. This last March, all she said to me was, it's getting really bad. and I'm 10 minutes from the airport. And I said, get on the plane. If it's as bad as you're saying, if it's as bad as I think it.
BB, this is Shadow the Night Owl right next to me. He is my spirit animal and mascot of the channel. He leads the cult of Shadow. Shadow the Night Owl.
Is get on the plane. And that was the end of our conversation because I was working and I had to go and I couldn't be on the phone anymore. And
she had a
fully
ticket. She bought a
expected-
ticket March 11th, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm told. I didn't know that though until after she went missing. But it told me that, yeah, there was definitely something going on that none of us knew about that she was keeping private, that there was definitely.
And
She was, if she
you
was
were about to say
afraid
you
enough
fully
to leave
expected.
again, there's got to be something going on. What's that? I'm sorry.
You were just about to say that you fully expected. Can you finish that?
I fully expected to hear from her and have her tell me she was in Miami or with her mother the next day.
And this is another part of it here too. If you know someone in an abusive situation, it can feel pretty powerless because you see how they're being treated, but the other person doesn't, or like they see it, but they have traumatic cognitive dissonance. Where on one hand, they see what's going on, but on the other hand, they're in a trauma bond. So on the outside, though, it's really tough, especially in the beginning. I know many people that have been abused, they will defend their abuser to their families in the beginning and almost be like a flying monkey for the abusers, or at the very least, an enabler. But as time goes on, they begin to see, all right, this is really what's going on here. But even so, that traumatic cognitive dissonance is hard to deal with. So if you have a son or daughter or a friend in a situation like this, what do? And I would say, unfortunately, there's not much you can do. You can try to hope they get awareness about the stuff, like send them people's content that are professionals, people that understand. But ultimately, it's up to them. It's up to them to make that choice to leave. And that's where the powerless feeling comes in, because what can you do? There's nothing you can do.
Or in Michigan here at the house by herself the next day. I fully expected that. And when I found out she went back, I was like, why? I mean, it's just a sense, you know. I mean, I can't say that I immediately called her up and said, what are you doing, you fool? I know there's more going on than what you are telling me, because I just knew it. And I knew nothing that I said was going to change that, because she was determined that that relationship was going to be fine as long as they didn't drink. And she had been telling me the remainder of the month. We talked quite a few more times throughout the rest of the month of March, and not really by text as much as by phone. We would rather speak to each other. And she had told me that they were not drinking, and they had even stopped smoking weed. And yeah, she was happy about that. She liked that. And then when I found out what happened and that they had been drinking, I was like, what? No, I thought she said, you know, and this was like through 2-3 weeks ago, that they were not drinking anymore. I don't understand. But yeah, I really do think that she just thought that as long as they didn't drink and like they had no substances at all whatsoever, that things would just be great.
And that's the other myth, right? When it comes to personality disorders and abusive relationships, drugs and alcohol very often are not the only fuel of it. I won't say impossible, because I have seen some people improve when they stop drinking and doing drugs. But unfortunately, though, if you're abusive, then that's an underlying thing outside of the drinking and drugs. So just because someone stops, you can't just blame it on the drugs or the drink either. Oh, I'm only this way because I'm drinking or drugging. I don't know about that one, Jack. So it seems like there's some underlying things that the alcohol is bringing to the surface even more. You're seeing more of what's really underneath. So I just wouldn't hang my hat on hoping someone stops drinking, because It's just not going to be good enough if they're disordered enough.
Rachel, I'm so sorry this has happened to your friend, and I'm so sorry that
I wish
you
I had
and her family are
more.
going through
I
this.
wish she would have texted me more than called me. I just, like I say to her, like, wherever you are, I just want to slap you for not giving me more to give them, because unfortunately, I just don't remember details as well as I should.
No, it's okay. But
But
I'm just, I
my
appreciate that you
immediate
tell.
gut said, why were they drinking again? I just,
Well, if you're an alcoholic, that's why you're drinking again. If you're an alcoholic, I don't know if you believe in the disease of alcoholism or the disease of addiction, but I think that's a big component of it. But again, personality disorders is a separate thing entirely. There's an alcohol problem, then there's a personality disorder problem. Two separate things. And when they're combined, it's even worse.
yeah.
I'm sorry you guys are all going through this, and I just want to say thank you very much for sharing these stories with me.
You're welcome.
My thanks to Rachel Shaw for speaking with me. That is not an easy interview to do. This is a dear friend of hers who, at this point, she is probably coming to terms with the fact that she'll never see her again, and that there was nothing that she could do to prevent that. Did everything. Again, those are just allegations. They're not proven in court. It is one woman's account of what her friend Lynette told her on an ongoing basis, showed pictures of. So it is what it is, right? I do want to say this. If you are watching and this is triggering and you feel like you have been a victim of domestic violence, or you know someone who is struggling with this, we have the hotline for you. It's 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE. You can also text the word begin.
So Chatty, Dr. Simon and I have went over this a lot. But this, he wouldn't say it's codependency. He would say it is dependency. That's really what it is. Because codependency is when there's a spouse of an addict or alcoholic, and they're codependent on the alcohol or the drug. That's a different situation. In a trauma bond situation, that's more like the other person could be dependent on the abusive person. That's the difference. So George Simon, that's his pet peeve, is that the difference between codependent and dependent.
VEGIN to 88788. And I have another link for you. There are so many people who know people in the Bahamas, people on Elbow Key who could be watching right now. Hello, I miss you guys. If you think you may have taken a photo on the evening of the 4th of April, it's the night before Easter Sunday, if you were over at the Abaco Inn, if you snapped some video, if you snapped some photographs of the sunset, of the fun in the bar, of the boats coming in and out of the harbor, up, White Sound Channel into the Abaco Inn, if you took any of those pictures, the sunset goes towards the channel, the waves are out towards the pool in the Atlantic, beautiful, beautiful images. If you took pictures or video, please send them to us at dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. If you don't want to send them to me, I understand. Please, for the love of God, send them to the United States Coast Guard Investigative Services. These guys are busting their asses on this case. They are the federal government's juggernaut investigators who are working this case. And they have a couple of ways for you to send this in anonymously. You can go onto their website, p3tips.com. That's the letter P, the number 3, tips.com. You can do anonymous tips there. You can also download their app. They've got a whole app for anonymous tips as well. It's CGIS Tips. Just go to your app store and look for CGIS Tips. You can download that app. It says right there, anonymous tips here. send what you can to the Coast Guard as well. We got a QR code on the screen as well. They need your pictures, your videos. We need your pictures, your videos of the Abaco Inn that night. If you were down on Tahiti Beach that day, that helps too. If you got some pictures of Brian and Lynette Hooker, if you have friends who were on Elbow Key, reach out to them and ask them, were you at Abaco Inn on Saturday night? Did you snap any photos? You may not see them. Most people don't see them because you're snapping something in the foreground and Brian and Lynette are in the background. You have to zoom in. So please check your photos, check your videos, and send us what you can. Again, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. And also, if you know something about the case, send us a note. dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. And can I just tell you from the bottom of my heart, several of you have already sent things in. Thank you so much. Let's keep the momentum going. Justice for Lynette Hooker. This is not going to just go away. This is not just going to go away. We're going to find the facts. If it takes us all effing year, we're going to find the facts on what happened to Lynette Hooker and whether Brian Hooker is telling the truth. And that goes for you, Brian Hooker's lawyer lady. The truth may just include that he has hurt Lynette before and may include that he did this time too. And I get it. You want everyone to.
So chat, the question is, can you make an SOS call without a SIM card? I'm not so sure you can, but maybe you can. But I wouldn't be surprised if you can't.
Give him the benefit of the doubt. And we are most we can, but every single time I run into a fact that does not make sense, does not add up, it gets harder and harder. That's what the law folks call building probable cause and a case. So you may be a busy lady. In any case, thank you all so much for listening and watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe. It really does help. I love that some of you folks have joined our actual club. There's a join button down there too. You get exclusive content. So I'm happy to share that with you. I'm going to do a Q&A very soon. And I'm just really thankful that you were here for this. Remember, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.
Singer Dave.
No, D.
I
44.
44.
Let's see what he has to say today.
Can I just say this one more time? That I know that I repeat this a lot, but something about this case, it doesn't sit right. We all know it. We all feel it. And it really hasn't sat right from the very beginning. I mean, you take an 84-year-old woman from her home, no clear motive, no forced narrative that makes any sense, no urgency in communication that points to ransom being real. But there is something else, something quieter, something that most people are not even focusing on today. Not what happened that night, but what happened, before that night ever came. Because if you step back and you look at this case from a different angle, not just as an abduction, but as a targeted event, then you have to ask a very different question. What did someone already know before they ever stepped foot on that property? And that's where this case changes. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for being here. If you're new here, this is where we break these kind of cases down.
So this is Brew Crew over 50. Make sure you like the video while you're here and subscribe to the channel. Say hello to Black Sheep Nation, the flock of black sheep in the live chat. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member, great ways to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl here's Hootie Snacks. And look at him. Shadow doesn't know what to think about that bald eagle by him. This guy's another bird man like me. I don't know how to feel about that. You see that? Bald eagle?
And from a real law enforcement investigative perspective with no noise, no fluff, just real analysis based on how cases actually work behind the scenes. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn the notifications on, because we're going to keep pushing on this case. We're going to keep pushing on other cases until we get the answers. And let me tell you right up front, Nancy Guthrie is not going to be forgotten here. Not today, not tomorrow, and not as long as I have a platform to keep her name in the front of the people who are paying attention. And that is you. Most people are locked into the same loop. They're analyzing the doorbell footage, the movement on the porch, the timeline of the entry and the exit, and the blood at the doorway. And yes, those things, they matter. But here's the problem. If you only focus on the execution of the crime, then you miss the preparation of the crime. And in a case like this, preparation, it's everything. Because hopefully we can all agree that this was not a random case. This wasn't chaotic, and it wasn't someone just stumbling into the wrong house. This case had direction, which means at some point before that night, someone knew enough to act with confidence. Now let's talk about something that's been floating around. The November the 25th hometown video. Savannah Guthrie. She's back in Arizona, spending time with her mother. It's a moment that was supposed to be meaningful, personal, harmless. But here's where you have to think differently. Not as a viewer, but as someone with intent. I always say, to be a good investigator, you've kind of got to think like a criminal. You've got to try to put yourself in that mindset.
It's a good question to go over here. Dana says, what makes people change, Jared? My first husband beat me and was so controlling over me, but he never hit his second wife, and she did mostly what she wanted. He also quit drinking while with her. Well, what stopped first? The abuse or the drinking? That's one aspect of it. And again, I mean, some narcissistic people, they can do well with a pushover. Like someone that never pushes back or whatever. There's just less conflicts. Someone who has a little more self-worth and will stand up to them, it can cause more trouble. Now, again, that doesn't mean it's your fault that trouble happened, but that can just explain some of it. Now, again, though, sometimes people will believe in a higher power or spirituality. And if someone genuinely wants to change, yeah, maybe a higher power can help them. That's what AA and NA believes. And I think maybe if you quit drinking and you try to really work on yourself, I think some change is possible. Now, granted, it depends how bad you were coming in as well. That's a big part of it. Sometimes people can be evened out by medications or supplements. Sometimes that can be a part of it too. But usually, though, I'm not going to give people too much hope in most cases, because what you just mentioned here is not the norm. Like, this isn't the norm. The norm isn't that they'll stop doing whatever and then treat the next person better. That's not norm. And that's only from what you know, right? You don't know what it might be really like behind closed doors. So it could be maybe a little bit different. But that being said, I do think some change is possible in some cases, but it is so unlikely that I don't default to that. I default to the other side for people's safety. But if someone does change, their actions will show it. That's the bottom line. But that was a good question, Dana.
Or you're not going to be able to figure it out. So what did that video show? It showed location familiarity. It showed lifestyle, routine. It showed comfort and access points to a degree. And maybe most importantly, it confirmed that Nancy was there. Nancy, she was alive, accessible, and part of a routine. Now, let me be clear about this, because there is no confirmed evidence that this video directly led to.
And that is very true as well, Julie Bug. It's not up to anyone else to change them. They have to be willing themselves. That's true. Because you can't give someone the willingness to change. You can't put in the footwork for them to change. That's something I see happens a lot, especially when there's a guy that acts helpless and then the woman becomes his mother a little bit. And then they try and they try and they try to help him, but they're doing too much. They're doing too much. They're doing what he needs to be doing himself. But the issue is they'll say, well, he's just not doing it though. He's not doing it. And I would say to them, well, that's your answer. He's not doing it. And if he's not doing it, he's demonstrating a lack of willingness. That's what that shows, right? So you got to be really careful. You can support someone, but you can't do the work for them. A big difference. Yes, and also please remember to like the video. And yes, Dana, it's not your fault being mistreated, of course. 146, yes. Make sure we get to 150, and I'll gift 5 memberships out there. And hopefully people think I wasn't being too hard on Mason back there as I was being mocking with Shadow.
Anything. But that's not the point here. The point is this: exposure creates opportunity, and opportunity in the wrong hands, it becomes planning. Now, let's say the quiet part out loud. You don't take an 84-year-old woman just to take an 84-year-old woman. That don't make sense, especially with mobility problems. She had limited mobility. It just don't make sense. Not from a criminal standpoint, and not from a risk reward standpoint, and also not from a behavioral standpoint. So if it's not about Nancy directly, then it's about what Nancy represents. And that's where this gets uncomfortable, because now you're not looking at a burglary or a random act or a spontaneous crime. You're looking at a targeted connection. And that connection, it leads straight to Savannah. Now let's talk about the ransom notes, because this is where the case really starts to fall apart. The notes, they were sent to media outlets. There was no proof of life, delayed communication, and low financial demand compared to this public reward of over $1 million. That's not how ransom works. That's not how negotiations work. That's not how someone behaves when money is the goal. So what is it? It's attention. And when you combine that with timing, especially notes appearing around public appearances, you're not looking at a financial motive. You're looking at a psychological motive. Someone who wants to be seen or heard and even felt, but not caught. Now we go deeper, because this is where most people, they stop, but you shouldn't. What if Nancy wasn't the target? What if she was just the access point?
All right, folks. Since we got to 5 memberships, I gifted the 5 Wizard of Radical Self-Respect memberships. Let's see who the Lords of Random decide deserves them. I don't choose, by the way. The Lords of Random decide.
Think about this, because she has a public figure daughter, known family connection, and high visibility, predictable emotional impact. This is how someone sends a message without ever saying a word. And if that's the case, then everything changes, because now the crime, it isn't about money. It's not about burglary. It's not about a random selection. It's about control and impact. Now, let's address the question that everyone is asking. Were there searches? Nancy's address, Savannah's finances, her net worth, the property layout. And here's the reality. If that data exists, we're not going to hear about it right now, because
Chatty, I don't think you were the reason. I think he'd probably be abusing anyone. And the cops, for them to ask you that question, this question, one time when the cops came, they asked me what I did for him to hit me. All it takes is just being a person, an autonomous person, or standing up to them or telling them no, or not giving them their way. That's all it takes. Like, it's not like people want to think there's a big reason, like, you provoked them or something. But what they don't understand is all it takes is just not letting them get their way, or telling them no, or saying something that is true about them, because they're extremely hypersensitive to criticism and perceived criticism, right? All that plays a part.
that is search warrants, IP tracking, device tracking, behavioral linking. That's case building material. And law enforcement, they don't release that stuff early. So the absence of that information publicly, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that it may be too important to release. Now let's go back inside the house, because this part matters more than people realize. This suspect moved with purpose inside this home. They avoided certain exposures, appears to understand positioning, possibly controlled the environment. Now, that doesn't come from guessing. That comes from familiarity or preparation. And that circles right back to the same question. How did they know what they knew? A lot of people are frustrated right now, and I understand that, because it feels like nothing is happening here. No arrests have been made, and there's still no clear direction. But here's the truth. Investigations, like I always say, they don't move the same way. They don't move in straight lines. They move in phases, especially cases like this. And right now, what's happening is evidence is being analyzed. Digital trails, they're being mapped. Behavioral profiles, they're being built. And those things, they take time, especially when you're dealing with someone who planned and controlled and tried to stay invisible. They put forth a lot of effort into this case, into this abduction. Now, let me address something directly. Some people say that it feels like the same things are being repeated. And yes, they are. And here's why that's happening. Because in cases like this, the answer, it's buried inside the details. And every time we go back through those details, we see something new. We connect something differently.
Everyone should say, welcome to Cotton Eye Joe. Shadow and I welcome Cotton Eye Joe to the Black Sheep Nation, the flock of black sheep. We also welcome Darawa.
We put pressure forward, and pressure, it leads to mistakes, and mistakes, they lead to arrest. And that's why this matters. That's why we keep talking about this over and over and over. Nancy Guthrie, she's an 84-year-old woman.
The problem with me and this guy is I tune out. Something about there's too many words for too little substance. No offense to him, but I don't get, for 11 minutes in, and I couldn't tell you one thing I've learned so far. I mean, can you tell me something we've learned, chat?
She's a mother and a grandmother and someone who should be home right now, safe with her family. And somewhere out there, someone knows exactly what happened. That's why we have to keep this. We have to keep this in the public. We have to talk about it, because maybe they planned it. Maybe they just helped. It may be someone who just helped. Maybe they just stayed silent, but they know. And I want to say this clearly to the person responsible for this. You may think that time is on your side, and you may think that distance protects you. You may think that silence keeps you safe. But cases like this, they don't go away. Never. They're never going away. They continue to build and they evolve every day. And eventually, they catch up. And when they do, everything that you thought was hidden, it will be seen. So
the algorithm does like this guy, though. I mean, these videos of his get between like 10 to 30,000 views, if not more. So he's rocking and rolling. I don't hate it. Don't hate the man.
if you're watching this and you care about this case, keep talking about it. Keep sharing it. It don't matter if we're saying the same thing over and over. We're going somewhere with this. Something's going to be uncovered.
Hey, give him credit for that too, right? Besides Brian Etten, who else is still talking about it? This guy, Brian Etten. This guy's Brew Crew over 50. Maybe JLR still is. That guy Sleuth, Monk's Intrigue. Who else? A bunch of AI channels are floating around out there. That's for sure. And those AI channels, they kill it though too. I mean, people don't like them, but they get a lot of views.
And keep Nancy's name out there. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, because listen, we're not.
Hey there, Jane. How are you? G.I. Jane. I want to watch what about the Porch.
There's a moment in almost every investigation where you look back and you ask one question. Did we miss something? And
you think he's slow, and I got him on 1.25 speed too, by the way.
Not because people weren't working hard or people just didn't care, but because in those first few hours, you just don't know what you don't know yet. And in this case, we now know something wasn't available early on. A suspect at the front door with what appears to be a bite light in his mouth, head down, and he was moving with purpose. And now the question starts to form, if that suspect was standing over that front porch mat during a struggle that left blood at the doorway, what exactly
Folks, yeah, this is 1.25. Ready? 1.25
was left behind, and was it collected?
Now back to normal speed.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for being here today. I really do appreciate it. Now, if you're new here, this is where we break these cases down from a real world investigative standpoint. No noise, no speculation for the sake of views, just walking it out piece by piece. And if this is something that you value, go ahead and subscribe and turn the notifications on. Now, let's lock in on this front door, because everything that we're talking about today, it comes right back to that one location. We know that there was activity at that door. We know that there was blood at the entry point. That alone changes the entire classification of that space. This is no longer just an entryway. That becomes the primary interaction zone now. And in any abduction case, especially involving an 84-year-old woman, a primary interaction zone is where your best evidence lives, because that's where contact happens.
Primary evidence zone, huh? That's the first I've heard of that.
That's where resistance happens, and also mistakes happen. Now, here's where this case shifts. The footage showing the suspect with what appears to be this bite light in his mouth, you know, it was not immediately available. It came days later. And That's not a small detail here. That's a major factor in this case, because initial evidence collection, it's driven by what investigators know in real time. So if the footage wasn't available yet, then the idea that the suspect may have had something in his mouth or increased saliva production, that head down posture, was not part of the early evidence strategy. And that means that the scene was processed without that context. And when context changes later, it can expose areas that weren't prioritized early. Now, let's talk about the bite light. This is where almost everyone is zoning in at. And you should know this, because a bite light requires that the suspect clamp or hold it in his mouth, between the teeth. They're adjusting their breathing, because when your mouth is open, you have your breathing is different. Maintaining jaw tension, and just you're operating in a focused, controlled posture. Now you add stress and movement to that, and possibly a physical confrontation. Saliva production increases under those conditions. That's not a theory. That is physiology. Now combine that with what we see. The suspect's head is angled downward. That creates a direct path for gravity to do its job. So now you've got a realistic scenario where saliva droplets could have been released unknowingly onto the surface below. Not guaranteed, but it's absolutely plausible. Now, let's bring the doormat into focus. That mat, it's not just a decoration. It's a fixed collection service at the exact point of contact. And based on what we know, the suspect was at the door. There was likely a struggle because blood was present. The suspect's head was down and a bite light was used.
Suspect's head was down. It's almost like he listened to JIm Clemente's video today in the future, even though this video is 2 or 3 days ago. And he's right. I think there was a struggle on the front step there. I think they hit her either with their fists or an object, and then she slumped over, probably like to her knees, and then maybe like put her palms down to like prevent herself from falling, and then like coughed with the blood. That's probably what happened. Something similar to that picture.
That mat sits directly beneath all of that. It means it becomes a potential location for blood transfer, saliva droplets, maybe shoe impressions, and fiber transfer. That's not reaching. That is standard scene logic. Now we need to address what people are seeing, because this is where the concern is coming from. There have been images captured by reporters and content
Shadow said, did someone say grandfatherly and wise?
creators showing that the mat was still present at the front door. We've seen it. To my knowledge, it's still there today. And well after the initial processing of the scene. And that tells us something very important. At minimum, it suggests that the mat was not removed as evidence in those early stages. Now, could it have been documented and swabbed or processed in place? Yes, that's very possible. But here's the issue now. A doormat like that with texture.
By the way, folks, please remember to like the video. 199 people here, 156 likes. So there's still room for some more likes in there for sure, even though most of the 199 probably didn't. But subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello to Black Sheep Nation. We call ourselves also the Cult of Shadow, Shadow the Night Owl here, of course. And we have some pretty cool folks in the live chat here. Encouraging, supportive, eccentric, and I say that as a compliment, of course, because I am eccentric as well.
Depth and the potential to hold biological material. It's not the kind of surface that you rely on quick surface swab to fully capture, especially if you're dealing with blood in the area or a suspected physical struggle, suspected position directly over it. And now later information pointing to a possible saliva transfer. That's the kind of item that in many cases gets collected and preserved entirely. So when people see that the mat is still there days later and now even months later, it raises fair question. Was the full evidentiary value of that surface recognized in those first critical hours? And here's where the delayed video becomes important again, because if the bite light and the potential saliva was not known at the time that the scene was processed, then that mat may not have been viewed through that lens yet. That doesn't automatically mean that something was missed, but it does mean this. The understanding of that front door scene evolved after the fact. And when that happens in any investigation, you start looking back at what was collected and what might need to be revisited. Now, let's bring something back into the focus that a lot of people remember. You remember that white tent. At one point in this investigation, we all saw images of a white forensic tent set up at the front entrance of Nancy's home, blocking the front door, the front porch. And that wasn't something random.
So from now on, I should call this the Fellow Bird channel. Instead of the Brew Crew, he'll be considered the Fellow Bird. Shadow says, I want to watch my cousin, the bald eagle. And when he says that, he means Brew Crew over 50. Shadow says, oh, by the way, want to watch Brew Crew? Want to watch the cousin with the bird?
Tent tells us something. It tells us because when investigators put up a tent like that, they're not just covering space. They're controlling the environment.
Oh, Shadow says, what do we have here? Maureen with the super chat. More likes, pretty please. And wouldn't you say, could a prettier person say it? More likes, pretty please. Shadow concurs. And Shadow thanks you for the £4.99, that is, not euros. So thank you very much for that, Maureen. Shadow and I appreciate it. We should be able to get the 200 likes at least, I think, right? Right? We got this. Shadow and I knows it. So thank you very much, Maureen. You are the best.
Think about where that tent was placed. Right at the front entrance. Right where we know that the suspect was captured on video. There was likely a physical contact there. But blood was present, both outside and just inside the doorway. And where that doormat sits, that is your primary interaction zone. So putting a tent there does a few critical things. It shields the area from wind and environmental contamination. It reduces external interference and it creates a controlled space for...
Maureen even said, pretty please. So please remember to like the video if you're out there watching. And spank the like button if you're feeling a little bit frisky. I know Julie Bug always likes to spank that like button. Leave your DNA in the like button or throw Shadow the Night Owl a like vest the way Brian Hooker should have sent one to Lynette Hooker. Shadow still has his doubts about that. Shadow says, if I was a Marine, I'd be jumping right in because I would say, no man left behind. That's what Shadow would say.
Detailed evidence work. And it allows for more precise documentation and collection. And in some cases, it allows investigators to slow everything down and process that space inch by inch. Now, let's connect this back to the question that everyone is asking about, the mat. If investigators establish that tent over the front entry, there is a very real possibility that they conducted a thorough on-site evidence collection process right there. And that could include detailed swabbing of multiple areas, collection of blood evidence, and close inspection of surfaces for trace material, focused work in and around that doormat. So instead of immediately removing the mat, they may have chosen to just process it in place. And if that happened, it could explain why the mat was never removed from that area.
So do you think that happened, folks? Do you think the mat was processed in place? I guess people are thinking, though, if you took it you would be able to know you absolutely got everything you could have from it. But leaving it there, like you leave it open to whatever other DNA comes in contact with it, because again, Brian Etton's camera person went right up to that door like the next day, Monday, right? Is that when Brian's person did that? So imagine if some of the DNA is that person's DNA, Brian's camera person, and Brian's camera person gets a call. Oh, we saw your DNA and your DNA was in CODIS. Or we found your DNA from using genetic genealogy. And he'd be like, what?
Area. Now, this doesn't automatically mean that everything was captured perfectly, but it does introduce a second, more grounded possibility that the area was not ignored, but instead it was worked extensively under controlled conditions. And that matters, because without that context, it's easy to assume something was missed. But when you factor in that tent, you start to see that investigators may have recognized early on that this doorway is where the case lives. And when you take all of this together, the delayed video, the bite light, the blood at the doorway, the door mat, and the presence of that tent, what you're really looking at is a scene that it's likely required far more precision than what we see from the outside. Now, let's answer the question that everyone is asking. If the mat wasn't collected early, can it still be collected now? And the answer to that is yes. But here's the real answer behind that. The value changes over time. DNA, it can survive. But on a front porch mat, you're dealing with maybe sunlight and UV breakdown. I know the mat was further in from the outside of the porch area, but you've got the heat and humidity and possible rain exposure, the foot traffic, and just movement and contamination. After nearly 3 months, you're likely in one of these three positions. First thing is a partial DNA remains, maybe possibly degraded, but it could be still usable in some cases. The second thing is trace evidence remains. You have fibers, embedded material, maybe even deeper biological traces. And third thing is nothing viable remains. Too much exposure, too much contamination. Now, if that mat still exists, which I believe it does the last I've seen, and if it was never collected, there is absolutely a reason to go back and take it right now, especially if new evidence like the video changes the interpretation of the scene. But here's the reality. You're no longer working with clean evidence. You're working with something that has been exposed and handled and maybe altered. That creates challenges in court, challenges in analysis, and challenges in confidence. This is the part people feel, even if they can't explain it. Those first hours in a case like this, they are everything. But that's when the scene is untouched. Evidence is fresh, and patterns are intact. After that, you're reconstructing. And reconstruction is always harder than collection. This isn't really about a mat. It's about what the mat represents. A moment in time where the suspect was at this door, where contact happened, where something was left behind. And when you look at it that way, you start to understand why you're locked onto this, because instinctively we all know that space matters. So let me ask you this: after everything that we just walked through, the delayed video, the bite light, the blood at the doorway, that doormat, and even the presence of that white tent, how do you see this now? Do you still believe that mat should have been taken immediately as evidence? Or do you think that investigators recognized that front door for what it was, and they worked it thoroughly right there on the scene? Give me your honest take on this, because this is where perspective matters. Drop it in the comments, because I'm reading through them. Trust me, I read the comments. And as we close...
And remember, C.C. Moore said you should be looking through the house for more DNA too. That's what she said. And there are other people that are saying, we were looking for DNA from something that happened on 9/11. So 25 years ago. So if you're going to look for DNA from something that happened 25 years ago, why not look for DNA from something that was 70 something days ago? And notice people aren't even counting the days anymore, right? Brian Netton used to do a day's countdown or count up, but I think he stopped doing that. What day are we on? 70 something?
Close this out. I want to bring it all back where it belongs. An 84-year-old woman taken from her home in the middle of the night. That's where this starts, and that's where it stays. Every detail that we talk about, every question, every angle, it all comes back to one thing: bringing Nancy home. Her family is still waiting and still searching and still living with questions that should have answers. And to the person responsible for this, you made decisions in the dark. You relied on timing. You relied on confusion. But what you left behind, whether you realize it or not, is still being worked piece by piece, step by step. And I don't know how you've eluded this so far, but know this: the truth is, it has a way of surfacing.
If this were X-Files, they would say the truth is out there.
No matter how much time passes here. So I hope you're ready. And until Nancy is brought home, until the family gets the answers that they deserve, I'll see you all in that next video.
Well, didn't really learn too much there in that one either. But, wanted to do something for the thumbnail's sake, considering Nancy and friends were in the thumbnail here. But that guy, now I'm tired now. I am tired. Shadow's tired now too, believe it or not. Zona says, welcome Zona, good evening from the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast. Think about the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the right next to Louisiana and then Georgia. I guess it's Alabama, right? It goes Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Shadow did fall asleep. Shadow just doing his Katy Perry routine. He's wide awake. But Shadow is also not grabbing other women's boobs like Katy Perry would as well. Did you see that story? Katy Perry. She kissed a girl and she liked it, so much so that she grabs boobs now too, as a joke. And then kisses Justin Bieber as well. Got one more left to get a few more likes. All right, well, 11 likes from 175. We should be able to get to 175. Like it for Katy Perry. For Miss I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It. These are all true stories, by the way. Shadow does not tell any tall tales, Autumn. Shadow is like Abraham Lincoln. He only tells the truth. Well, Linda, that is about the connections people are making around certain kinds of things. Like, it's not a direct connection, but I can read you the article that I was reading about it today. Someone in the members only live chat said it to me. Eight likes to 175. We are a unique group here, Zona. Glad you're here. I'll read you what the 11 scientist thing here is before we close this down. 11 missing scientists. You ready? Or I could even pull it up on Google. Vanity Fair. "11 scientists are dead or missing. It was only a matter of time before conspiracy theories hit the White House." One morning this February, William Neal McCasland walked out of his home in Albuquerque for the last time, leaving his phone and prescription glasses behind. Dr. Grande did go over this, by the way, and we did go over this too. Nearly 2 months into the search for the 68-year-old, his .38 caliber revolver remains unrecovered, and there is still no official account of the retired Air Force Major General's sudden disappearance. For an extraterrestrial enthusiast of a certain stripe, the mystery has landed like a modern-day Roswell. McCasland had overseen classified aerospace research at a laboratory that UFO lore identifies as the secret site of debris from the 1947 crash. After he retired in 2013, he worked as a consultant on media projects for Tom DeLonge, as the Blink-182 frontman's longtime obsession with alien-related conspiracy theories was bursting into broader view. A 2016 WikiLeaks dump revealed that DeLonge had emailed Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta about McCasland. In online UFO communities, the astronautical engineer's life had long been pointing to revelations just beyond reach, and his unexplained vanishing was proof that they must be on to something. There he is. McCasland is the most high-profile of 11 scientists whose deaths or disappearances over the last 4 years have formed the basis for a conspiracy theory that has recently crossed over into mainstream visibility. There are various spins on the line of inquiry, and the specifics are hard to pin down, but it revolves around the idea that these occurrences are connected and point to some manner of government cover-up, often, but not always, having to do with UFOs. Other accounts deal with nuclear secrets or rocket technology. The missing scientist theory has traversed the Daily Mail and New York Post, a leading Substack newsletter published by MAGA Maha personality Jessica Reed Krause, and the airwaves of prominent podcasters. Joe Rogan recently exemplified the typical tenor and precision of the coverage when he proposed that the disappearances could have something to do with plasma technology, whatever the fuck that is. Blood. Last week, the conspiracy reached its apex in the White House after a Fox News correspondent asked Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at a briefing whether anybody was investigating this to see if these things are connected. Leavitt assured him that if it were true, that's definitely something I think this government and administration would deem worth looking into. I hope it's random, Donald Trump soon told reporters. Pretty serious stuff. Hopefully, I don't know, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, but some of them were very important people, and we're going to look at it over the next short period. The House Oversight Committee chairman announced on Monday that the group was beginning to investigate, proposing that these deaths and disappearances may represent a grave threat to U.S. national security and to U.S. personnel with access to scientific secrets. And the FBI added in a statement on Tuesday that it's spearheading the effort to look for connections into the missing and deceased scientists. At a Turning Point USA event on Friday, the president doubled down on his appeal to interested onlookers among the right and alien curious. I recently directed the Secretary of War to begin releasing government files relating to UFOs and unexplained aerial phenomena, he told the audience, adding, I thought I'd save it for this crowd because you're a little bit out there. Mostly lost amid the noise was that McCaslin's wife had told a 911 dispatcher when he went missing, "I have some indication that he must have planned not to be found." A week later, Susan McCaslin Wilkerson issued a statement. "I would like to take this opportunity to dispel some of the misinformation circulating about Neil and his disappearance," she wrote in March, "mostly from uninformed media sources." She cited a few misconceptions that attached to some of the prevailing interpretations. While it was true that McCaslin had once had access to classified information, he had retired nearly 13 years ago, and it seems quite unlikely that he was taken to extract very dated secrets from him. And while it was also true that McCaslin had provided free technical expertise to DeLong on a fiction book and other media projects, his association with the UFO community was passing. And, quote unquote, "this connection is not a reason for someone to abduct," end quote, McCaslin, who does not have any special knowledge about the ET bodies and debris from the Roswell crash stored at Wright Pat. Despite her own confusion surrounding her husband's disappearance, Wilkerson appeared to find some humor in the outlandishness of the theories. At this point, with absolutely no sign of him, she wrote, "Maybe the best hypothesis is that aliens beamed him up to the mothership. However, no sightings of a mothership hovering above the Sandia Mountains have been reported." For conspiracy theorist experts, the missing scientist saga similarly falls apart on any closer inspection. It's one of those things where once you start looking into the details, paranormal investigator Benjamin Raffer tells me, the mystery sort of vanishes. The scientists in question worked across specialties ranging from material processing to the development of cancer drugs, only in some cases dealing with aerospace or nuclear matters. One died of natural causes, according to the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office, and 2 faculty members at MIT and Caltech were the victims of widely covered homicides. A long article. Of course, what you're losing here is that these are actual people who have disappeared or died, Rothschild says, and every one of these is a family trauma that's essentially being monetized for clicks. I don't know about that one, Jack. I don't know. Well, we can go over that more in the future, perhaps. So they're trying to make a connection. Doesn't always mean there isn't a connection, but we shall see. Mr. Rooster is like Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA. Julie Bugg singing the Hard Knock Life song with Jay-Z in the background. Bella says, detention centers in USA full of people dying and no documentation, and too many detention centers and packed with no health care. People have died here in Florida at Alligator Alcatraz, no UFO. Yeah, well, that happens too, for sure. Hannah, welcome. I keep coming in late, rewinding and commenting, therefore commenting in the completely wrong part of the video. It's all good, Hannah. We're happy to have you here. 2 CIA agents died in Mexico last week investigating the cartel. I wonder if they were murdered. What does Pamela say here? seems strange about the deaths of David Wilcock and David Sheets. Well, we'll look into them next. We shall see with all of this. Ugh. But all right, folks, I'm tired now, so it's about time to wrap this thing up. So congratulations to those who got the 5 gifted memberships. And Heather, Randizzle, Maureen, Julie Bug, Rooster, Linda, Bella, Maureen, Christy. Thank you to the mods, Laura, and Songbits, and Miss Kim. Livin is marked absent. Livin, who only comes now once a week. Dee Dee, Autumn, Linda, Julie. Snoop. Can't forget Snoop and Hannah either. Bethany's been gone for a while. Shadow watches over you, Maureen, like your guardian angel. He's like Jiminy Cricket. Good night, Chatty. You have a great one as well. Autumn, you too. Zona? Ah, yes, you got it, Zona. We are happy to help. Cotton Eye Joe, who is Cotton Coast. You have a great one as well. You know it, Julie. Jackie, you have a great night too, my dear. Tina, thanks for your support tonight, Tina. I appreciate it. And Maureen and Mike also for their super chats. I remember them. Shadow and I remember all. So Dana, you have a great night too. All right, folks. You got it, Maureen. Randizzle. Over and out. And Dee, have a great night too.